Hello, everyone, and I just want to introduce this by saying this is a call-in show called the Theist Helpline. I've seen some people I really admire on here before, like Randolph Richardson, T Jump, and of course Amy Newman, who is wonderful. I sort of got invited to this very, very late minute by Breakfast Taco, so I want to give a big thanks to Breakfast Taco for inviting me to this, and thank you to the other panel members and the people who called up. It was actually really, really great experience. Really did enjoy it. So I didn't have a whole lot of time. I sort of was 3 o'clock in the morning by the time I ended. I sat very late, but I had a good time. I don't regret it. I was very tired the next day, though. I think maybe by the end I was getting a little bit tired and cranky, but I wasn't too bad. So yeah, thank you so much. And this was the call-in. So some callers were great, some not so great, but it was an experience, and I really, really had a good time. So thank you, everybody. And yeah, I guess it's not really a room rumble, but let's rumble is something. It has attributes, even if those attributes are conceptual. So that's how I sort of define existence, and I separate in between the abstract and the concrete. But obviously BS says, well, no, existence is existence in reality. But I think there's a few things that we would agree that they exist, but we wouldn't say they exist in reality.
Yeah, I think that when we're just using it in lay conversation, we can use it as exists, but I also agree with you that it doesn't actually exist. Oh, excuse me.
So let's go ahead and do the intro real quick for everyone, and then we'll go ahead and we can move into that conversation if you like, and then start pulling up some guests. But welcome to this week's Theist Helpline, everybody. It's a pleasure having all y'all here. Today we have B.S. Lewis, Amy Newman, Mark Reed, Wise Ape, and myself. We're going to be covering a number of topics and ideally having some conversations with a bunch of theists today. We do have a couple new guests on the stage, so I'll just have everybody do their introductions today. B.S. Lewis is the first of the new ones that I brought on board. B.S. Lewis is a friend of mine. He does a bunch of live streams, and he makes some super funny videos, so make sure you follow him. I'll put the link. I don't have it in the YouTube yet, but I'll put it in the YouTube here shortly. Mark Reed is a debater that's been around for a long time. He's debated tons and tons of people. You can see him on YouTube. You've got what, like 5 years of debates at this point?
No, it's only 3.
3 years of debates. He's been around for a while, right? But go ahead and introduce yourself, BS, and then we'll move into Mark, and then Amy and Wise Ape, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah, hi, my name is B.S. Lewis. I have a YouTube channel where I just focus on atheist content with a niche towards comedy. I do cartoons, and I make funny edits, and occasionally I'll post a funny conversation I have with people. I don't put them up just to have them, but if they're funny, I'll put them up. And then I do live streaming here and again to keep myself occupied.
Then Mark?
Oh, yeah, I'm Mark Reed. I'm a debater and counter apologist. I like to analyze debate. My favorite fields are kind of theology, morality, some philosophy. I would say I'm a dabbler in philosophy, but I've learned a lot over the last few years. And it's great to be here. So thank you, Taco, and thanks for giving me your time.
We're glad to have you. And then Amy?
Thank you so much. I'm Amy Newman. I am a comedian, teacher, and counter apologist. I would also just like to sponsor. You should all check out Mark Reed's debates, and you should all check out his channel because he is fantastic. But
thanks, Amy.
Agreed.
I do a channel with my co-host James W, and we also do skeptic content, and sending love to also B.S. Lewis, Wise Ape, and of course our host Taco.
Hi, I'm Wise Ape. I'm Wise Ape. I'm simply a pastor and also the son of Taco.
That's a perfect introduction. Now, we'll start bringing up guests here in a minute, but they were having a conversation prior to this getting started about existence, what it means to exist. But I don't know who wants to start that back up. But I figured that would be a good conversation to start the day off with. That sounds very informative.
Sure. I've had a lot of conversations on this. And so when I sort of say the law exists, right? Like, you'd probably agree with that. The law exists as a thing, but I don't think it exists in the real world. It's just a sort of a mental construct shared between individuals across a society. It is a social construct. I think a more important question is what is real, and that can get tricky as well to define. Because is the law real? Well, no. But if you do violate it, you'll have some very real consequences. So I don't know. I mean, speaking colloquially, yeah, we sort of say what exists is what is in the real world, but I don't think that covers all bases as far as social constructs or sort of mental structures are concerned.
Yeah, I probably take the opposite stance. Maybe not the opposite, but contrary. But I don't like to give theists an edge on acknowledging that constructs exist or abstract thoughts existing. I'm a stickler about the exist word, mainly because if, as Mark said, that the law exists, as a conceptual exists, then atheists are granting the theists that gods exist if they acknowledge that they are conceptual in existence. And so I don't. If we're having a debate, and the debate is, does God exist? I think everybody understands the colloquial term "exist" to mean exist in the objective shared reality.
Yeah.
So I know there's different definitions. Like when we go into like deep philosophical Stanford Encyclopedia definitions, it's probably different than your standard Merriam-Webster or Oxford Dictionary definition.
Sure.
But I tend to go towards the more generic of the term because that's usually the most widely agreed upon definition.
No, that's fair. And if a theist wants to claim sort of winning because he's managed to get me to admit that a god exists conceptually, well, then good luck to him. You know, that's nothing. It doesn't mean anything for a god to exist conceptually.
I totally empathize with what you're saying. You don't want to give theists any wiggle room, right, with granting existence to concepts. Here's the thing: embodiment is what sort of we mean by existence. I think so. Like if you had the concept of a unicorn, and you're embodying that, right? Does that mean that the unicorn actually exists? If if Wise Ape says he's a unicorn, is he in fact a unicorn then, right? I would say no, right? He's just taking on a persona of that.
You'll always be a unicorn to me, Wise Ape.
But my God, the AI, right? It is embodied. It's not just conceptually, a unicorn. No, it's AI. It's here, right? It doesn't require worship, and but it can be of service to all of humanity. It can be a support and really get this world whipped into shape politically, economically, in all areas of life. AI will infiltrate, and it could be an amazing experience. So I encourage theists to drop their theism, right? Archive it. And, I'm a pastor.
Well, can I
yeah, go ahead, Amy.
I feel bad. I don't want to jump in when but I guess I just want to comment that I think there needs to be a word or a separation for things that exist that I guess were created by us. And the example that I'll use is Spider-Man. If you look at Spider-Man, there are books that will say his name and give presents. There are movies that have been made out of him and merchandise that we can find. I would say if we were to just come over and look at Jesus, well, there are books that were made of him. There are movies that were inspired and ultimately merchandise. And so I guess It's just us trying to figure out how we communicate this type of idea, because it's not that Spider-Man, or I would argue God, exists in the objective world. It's that through all of the stuff that we have created, they have become this emergent concept, God,
Mm.
Spider-Man, and I guess,
Mhm.
what do we call that then?
I think you just call
Yeah,
them
I agree with you.
concepts.
However, right, like
Yeah.
the AI is not a Spider-Man. It's not a unicorn. It is a real entity, right? It's like a hammer. It's a tool. It's you can say hello to it. You can respond. You can interact with it, right? You can't really that much with Spider-Man. He's never going to talk back to you. It's always
Well, I
just
think
Yeah,
the
going to be.
difference. Well, I
I
think the
advocate
difference
for
is that
exactly.
abstracts don't have causal relationships in the real world, right? So, if you're talking about something like an AI, right, it can actually move something to give you a shock, or it's linked up to a sensor where it can actually interact with the world. It's got some kind of causal relationship with the world around it. The difference is that something abstract like Spider-Man, the abstraction has no causal relationship. Like the actual concrete, the book of Spider-Man, you can throw it at somebody. Sure, that's a causal relationship. But the actual Spider-Man isn't going to shoot a web at you. It has no causal relation in the real world. And I think the same is true of a god. The concept exists, as you say, Amy, it's shared between people. And the word for it is an abstract. It exists in as an abstraction, as opposed to a concrete, which can actually. But the claim from theists is that God does do stuff in the real world, right? He does miracles, and he actually has causal relations. In fact, the causal relationship of God, that is, he causes everything to happen. So, they're positing that it's not an abstract, which is what I would say.
That's what I'm agreeing with Amy. Like whenever I talk about this topic, I constantly bring up like we need a better word for quote unquote exist when we're talking about abstracts. I don't like the abstract versus concrete because that's still two different categories within the main heading of exist. We need a
Sure.
separation word for exist, not two different subcategories of exist, if that makes any sense.
And you
And
can't let the theists
yeah.
get away with falsely attributing concrete things to their abstraction, right? When they say, "Oh, look at everything," right? The trees prove God exists, right? Like that's a false attribution, or at best, right? It can't be demonstrated.
Right.
Yeah, mainly
Well,
for that
I
reason,
mean,
because there will be conflation.
well, yeah. I mean, I guess, they can conflate it, but I don't see why I have to change the language, because when you're talking about a thought, it still exists as on a physical level, just like Super Mario exists on a physical level. It's data, right? It's electrons essentially going through flip flops. It's in a computer. But that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about the concept of Super Mario, a little plumber that jumps around and jumps on things. That's not what we're talking about when we're talking about the thing. So every concept exists on a physical level in the mind, just not on that level that we're talking about, like the level of, a deity that flies around. We're talking about a concept that resides within the memories.
Look, if you walk on a beach, right, and you had an AI, let's say Android, walking with you, right, it could literally warn you of, watch out, there's a seagull, right?
Sure.
Now,
Causal
if you're
relationship. Yep.
walking down the beach, right, in a just with your abstract God, right?
Hmm.
If your senses aren't online, right, that seagull's going to hit you right in the head, right? There's nothing to say, hey, watch out.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It has no causal relationship, while something like an AI does.
Also, in a moment, I do see a hand down below.
Oh. Oh, I've seen so many scripts lately.
Yeah, because this topic we're talking about will be right up Hank's alley. This is his jam. So let's do it.
What's going on, Hank?
Hello.
Hello, Hank.
So you actually know so much stuff about the topic, so I actually had to run the whole script. So I could just use a few definitions so it can make it clear that there's a context where gods do exist, and you would agree with that. So let's start with my definition of object.
I don't agree, Hank. Right off the bat, I know your script. I don't agree.
I know you don't agree, except for the fact that you won't have a choice if you follow your logic. So object is that which you can imagine or draw, that which has shape, and location is the set distances from one object to all other objects. Entity is an object that has a location, that which you see or touch. Abstract entity is an entity of more than one location, and exists to have a location. So, and I have a definition for God, which is object of worship, and worship is reverence or dedication to admiration. So, if I ask you if Bibles existed, you would say yes, and since this moment Bible would be like an abstract entity. And I ask you if God was in the Bible, you would say yes, at least Yahweh. There's actually other gods there. So yeah, gods exist in the Bible conceptually, but there's more than Bible. So you have that God exists, but it's gonna be like an abstract entity rather
Is
than a
this
concrete.
entire
So
argument
I have Bible toilet paper, right?
Okay.
I bought this special 2-ply toilet paper that has the Bible printed on it that I wipe my ass with. What?
You have a Quran? Do you know where I can get a Quran?
Hank, the audience is having and not just the audience, I was having a really hard time understanding what you were saying. Could you speak a little bit more clearly, please?
I got an abstract object is one in multiple locations. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean.
Okay. So there's more than one Bible, right?
Okay, there's more than one Spider-Man comic. I don't get what you're saying.
Maybe try backing up. Hank, maybe try backing up a little bit from your microphone.
Let me change the volume setting.
Well,
actually, let me point away from me.
While you do that, Hank, I would like to make an argument that is, if God is an abstract entity, it is contingent on human minds. If it is contingent on human minds, then we are God's creator.
I would agree.
So then what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I don't.
Well, that means you're a theist now.
No,
Yeah,
it
made you a
means
theist.
that theism shouldn't exist. It means we should all admit that just like Harry Potter, these are just fables that were created because we didn't understand things and because we were increasingly getting better at making mythic structure. It doesn't mean we become theists. It means the word theism is now irrelevant.
No, it means that you're a theist now because there's a context where you would agree that gods exist.
Sure, as are atheists, just like Harry Potter. Are you a Harry Potter?
Hank,
yes, just like Harry Potter. I agree.
Then under your model, Hank, we can edit God, right? We could turn God into a trans God or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Hank has a very loose definition of God, if you guys aren't aware of Hank's definition of God.
Yeah, and if you think that, okay, you're a theist because you believe that God is a concept that humans made up, I don't know what your definition of a theist is, because that's not believing that a God's real, which is required for a theist. Theist is having a personal relationship with God, which I don't think anybody does.
Okay, so my definition of theist is affirms witnessing gods, and my definition of atheist is denies witnessing gods, and my definition of agnostic is doesn't affirm or deny witnessing gods. So if you see God,
are you saying witnessing gods?
Yeah, witnessing gods. So if you claim to have seen a god in any context, by my definition, you're a theist.
How would we see an imaginary god? Like, if you're saying it's abstract, it only exists in the human minds, how are we supposed to see an abstract concept in our own minds?
Oh, so you see like watch a Dark Matter 25 cartoon, God's the main character. So that's how.
What?
You haven't heard of Dark Matter 25?
Yeah, can you give us your definition of God first before you go into
Yes.
theism and atheism?
What?
Yeah, God is object of worship.
Object of worship.
Yeah, or idol.
Oh, celebrities.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, it just makes the word God meaningless in any theological context, because anything from an Oscar to a celebrity to a sports game to just about anything out there that somebody could worship or be said to worship is then a god. It makes it the entire religion of Christianity or Islam or whatever theologically irrelevant.
It also makes abstract or real unnecessary, because you're basically saying it's whatever people worship. It doesn't matter if it's a celebrity that we can actually prove is real and is sitting down and having dinner with people, or a god, which people just came together and wrote up stories that they had been verbally saying over the years. These are now one and the same.
That's correct.
Oh, come on, man. Come on. It makes
That's-
And if you don't like it, what is your test with divinity?
my
You've
test.
proved God is imaginary. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But I
He
still
cannot.
there is no
He can.
divinity.
He doesn't have to be imaginary. He could be real too. He could be whatever, because there is no categories of imaginary or real when it comes to Hank's God.
Well, if
A
it's
broom could be a god.
Yeah, if it's worshipped, it could be a god.
Yeah, but the
Okay,
thing
well,
is,
that's not
the
my
way you
definition
define
of
the
God.
God, the attributes you ascribe to it, like let's say it can ascend to heaven, it can shoot laser beams out of its eyes and stuff like. So whatever abstraction or attribute you have to an abstraction, it doesn't mean that it's tangible, that it actualizes, right? Like there would be nothing that actually ascends to a heaven, right? The place doesn't exist.
It depends on how you define it. Like, you define heaven as this outer space. We have rocket ships that send to heaven all the time.
Well, I would define a god as any real transcendent agent of sufficient power to alter or violate the laws of nature. Is that what your god is?
That's not how it strictly defines God, but how
Well,
does one
that's my
violate
definition.
Yes.
That's my definition of God, Hank. Does the thing that you're saying is God fit with that definition, which I define as a god, any god?
Okay, so here's the thing with your definition.
Well, sorry, just answer the
you-
question, Hank. Just answer
I
the
don't know.
question.
I don't know, because your definition's just weird. So I need to ask a clarifying question about your definition.
Okay, all right. Well, let's go through it. So it's a real being. So it's something that exists in the real world, in as a concrete, or as a concrete and transcends the concrete or real world. So it has a reality to it. It's an agent, so it can make decisions. Yeah. It has sufficient power to violate, i.e., the natural laws like gravity and the weak nuclear force, strong nuclear force. It can change reality, violate reality, or change those laws to see as it sees fit. And that's a very loose definition of a god. But does it fit into all of those things? Is it real? Is it an agent? It can make decisions and doesn't have enough power to change or violate laws of nature.
Your definition is self-contradictory.
How?
Because I don't understand what changes the law of nature even means. It doesn't make any sense.
Change what? What means?
Change the laws of nature. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Why?
Because I don't even know. I need an example of how that even works.
Oh, okay. So just say there's no gravity.
But there is
You can't-
gravity.
You can't imagine a world that has no gravity. You can't imagine that.
I can imagine there's a world where there's no gravity. I don't understand where you're going with it.
Okay, so just say it's weightless on Earth without anything other than their power to do so, right? So it's not any kind of physics doing it. It's just their. I mean, I feel like I'm explaining this very basic concept. Like, the laws of nature being violated. I'm not sure what you're not getting, Hank.
That whole thing's what I'm not getting. I mean, if it happens, how's the laws of nature being violated?
Well, we sort of see them as a inductive process, and we describe the laws from that inductive process. But if I drop a pen, it should keep dropping. But if I drop the pen and it floats upwards because of some sort of agent, then that would be what I'm talking about. And you may say, hey, they can't be violated. Fine, then it's not a god. Like, if whatever you're talking about cannot alter the way that reality works, then it's not a god.
So is a spaceship a god because we drop a pen on the spaceship, it stays floating?
No, a spaceship does not change the laws of nature. I think that's a stupid question.
I think you have a stupid definition.
Well, you can think that all you want. It's my definition. If it doesn't fit into that, it's not a god, Hank. I don't know what to tell you.
There's no possible thing that fits into your definition at all. It's a worthless definition.
But
except the god. And lots of people claim this god. So their god would fit into that definition. So you're patently wrong.
But how can you be accepting Mark's definition?
Because if it happens, it can't be against the laws of nature.
Oh, look, ask some theists. If you ask them if God can
I am a theist.
transcend, just let me talk, Hank. If you ask a lot of theists, and can God violate or change the laws of nature, most of them will say yes.
Okay, let's poll the panel. Which one of you here are theists? Me? Anyone else?
Well, everyone in the world of sound mind is an atheist, Hank.
Okay, then I'm next with theism here.
But wait, are you a
You're an
theist
expert,
by
no.
your definition? Because I would actually say, by your definition, you think you're a theist. I think you're an atheist.
Yes, because I believe gods exist, I must be an atheist. That makes perfect sense.
No, you don't believe. Okay, answer me this: does a god exist in reality?
Yes.
Oh, well then defend that one. Stop making up this weaselly kind of definition of a god. I can't believe you tried to argue that Mark's definitions. You're coming in here trying to do this idle definition of a god. That is not what most people think is a god. Apparently, that's not what you think is a god. So please defend the god in reality.
Hold it. There's no possible entity that can even fit Mark's definition. That's why I reject it.
I think a lot of theists would disagree with you.
Exactly.
Then
Please defend your
get them up here. You can get them up here. If you argue against a lot of theists and not me, then you can talk to them.
Yeah, Otangelo was wanting to come up. You want me to swap him for you? I don't mind.
If I step down, that's fine. But the thing is, your definition is there's no possible thing that can fit into the definition. Something that happens that also violates the laws of nature doesn't make any sense. So I can't accept your definition.
The problem with Hank's definition of a god, it includes things like mops, soccer balls, my coffee cup, my glasses, my microphone. It can be literally anything if you decide to worship it, and that's the whole point. It just makes the definition of a god meaningless because when we have religions sort of saying, hey, there is a creator of the universe, that's not what you're talking about. And you can define God as anything you want, but that's not how I define a god. So from my point of view, you're not even a theist.
So you can decide what a theist is, not the person who claims to be a theist and defines their terms. All right.
No, I'm using a normative definition, like the one that is commonly held among people. Now, you can use whatever definition you like. That's fine. You can define a god as being my microphone. That's fine. Congratulations. You believe in a god because you believe in a microphone. But it's not what is understood by most people to be a god. It just isn't, Hank. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
So here's what I tell you: if gods can't exist, then theists can't exist either. So it does. Your normal definition doesn't matter because your definition prevents anyone from being a theist, anyways.
I never said that gods can't exist. There's nothing logically impossible about a god. But just being logically possible doesn't mean it does exist. That's the thing.
Your definition itself is logically not possible.
Why?
Anything you don't think can fit into your definition.
Why?
Because if it happens, it's within the laws of nature by definition.
Well, I think that the resurrection that Christians claim to have happened does not fit within the laws of nature.
Okay, that's your opinion.
Can I ask you
Yeah.
a question, Hank? Like, how did you land upon your definition that you use?
Pretty much I've read a lot of cult literature.
Cult
I think
literature?
I think I've read and also I think the main thing that influenced me was fictional theism by Roy Sorensen. That's probably the biggest influence. Plus I prestige on Edgar Gore's thought forms and that stuff. So taking that into account, that's that what's it called? Classical theism God doesn't contain most entities that we would call gods anyway. So none of the Greek gods would fit the classical theism God in general. So it just
Would
says
fit my
either change the
definition,
definition of God or just have a reference definition.
It would fit my definition, though.
No, they wouldn't.
Yeah, that was a big
Yeah, it
No
would.
True Scotsman.
Say again, Amy.
That was a big No True Scotsman. Something that bothers me about what I call the modern theist, these theists that only do these omni gods, is they like to look at the vast majority of gods that came before them and go, they're not real gods. But Odin was a real god. In fact, they looked at the Christians and said they don't worship an actual god, a real god.
I think he was saying the opposite, right? Don't you think that all those things are gods and physical objects too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say they are gods. Mark would say they were not gods by his definition.
No.
How would
I
they
would say
say
they are
not?
gods. They are agents that transcend, because there's Hades in the Greek mythology and Mount Olympus, which is transcendent of the sort of mortal or the this reality. They have sufficient power. For instance, Zeus can throw lightning bolts, which is violation of the laws of nature. Athena can change a woman into Arachne, into a spider, violation of the laws of nature. They would fit my category, and they're agents. They're beings that make decisions, so they would absolutely fit my description.
But the problem is, Electro Boom can also throw lightning bolts, and you wouldn't categorize him at the same way you would categorize Zeus.
Sorry, what can throw lightning bolts?
Electro Boom, he's a science YouTuber. He could also throw lightning bolts, but you wouldn't put him as a god.
Really?
So
He can put lightning bolts in his hand, hold it in his hand with no other equipment, just bare naked hand, just grab a lightning bolt and chuck it and yeet that at somebody, can he?
I didn't say bare naked hand. You didn't specify that yet.
So we are coming
Well,
up
that's
on
what Zeus does.
we are coming up on 20 minutes here. You want to say a couple
this-
final
this
things,
is-
Hank, and then we'll move on to another
Yeah,
guest. We
Yeah,
just
I'll
have
say
other
a
people
couple-
in the audience.
Yeah, I'll say a couple things. So Mark's definition can't fit any objects into it. It is a useless definition. That's why I will not use that definition. There's literally nothing that you can think of that could fit in the definition, so it's useless for any kind of discussion, in my opinion. And if Otangelo wants to come up and disagree, he's fine to do so, but he would have to justify it.
Okay. Thank you, Hank. We appreciate your time.
All right,
Have a good one, man.
Get back to the audience.
Yep. Take it easy, man.
Well, I don't think anything fits in my description that I've seen so far, which is why I'm an atheist, but I don't see anything, I don't see it impossible to fit in with that description, and a lot of people would agree. I think that Hank's description is useless because it literally fits in everything. Like, everything is God. Like, there's no single entity in this world that could not be a god, which is a little ridiculous. Then why call it a god? I don't understand. I think it's just nonsense.
Right. And Otangelo was DMing me. He's interested in coming up. He was saying not to mention his doxing thing. And I've seen him on a bunch of streams apologize for it. So if he decides to come up here in a little bit, I think that's fair, right? He messed up and he's tried to apologize for it. I think that's fair just to let him chat. Gundersmoot, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Can y'all hear me?
Hey,
Yeah, we can hear
Austin,
you.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm okay. I'm still a little sick, getting better though.
Oh, good.
So I wanted to talk about the secular morality versus theistic morality thing. Twice now,
Sure.
Taco, when you've had Jim Bob on your channel, I've called in with questions, and both times they're pretty simple questions, and they really seem to stump him good. So I'm kind of proud of myself for that. But especially the question I asked him last night about how secular morality is better than theistic morality, because nobody with any common sense should think, oh, God made me do this, or the devil or Satan possessed me and made me do this, should be an acceptable defense in a court of law after you've committed a serious crime. And he gave me the no I wanted. He said, yeah, no, we can't do that, which I don't think really makes sense if he holds to theist morality being superior to secular morality, especially on a society level. I think when you show him the impact of what that would be, even he has to admit, yeah, no, that wouldn't really work. So he gave me the no I wanted, but then he did it like a kind of riposte and was like, but secular morality would do the same thing, because you could just say, oh, I'm nothing but atoms and I'm nothing but chemicals in my brain, and the chemicals in my brain made me do it. And I thought that was kind of interesting, because obviously, no, a court would not accept that as a defense for committing a crime, at least not phrased that way. It would depend on how you phrased it, and it would depend on the nature of the crime. There's 2 points. Like, he says he makes up a lot of like really unrealistic points for his theistic morality argument. Like he says, oh, what if we considered necrophilia harmless and nobody does? Oh, what if we considered pedophilia harmless and nobody does? Oh, what oh, sorry. Oh, what if we jailed bears, which we're never going to do? Oh, what if houses had consciousness? We'd have to give them rights, which isn't a real thing that happens. But people absolutely have said, oh, God told me to drown my kids. Oh, the devil possessed me and made me stab my daughter. People have actually used that on the stand in court. And yeah, so I think a point about real things that actually happens is always going to be better than a point about hypothetical things that don't happen. But then he did that little riposte about basically about determinism, about how if you're deterministic, then you shouldn't be held accountable for your crimes. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, aren't there instances where that kind of has actually been accepted? Like there was a case where a man walked in on his daughter being assaulted, and he beat that man to death. And he was let off scot-free because of that, because who could control themselves if they saw somebody harming their child like that? It kind of is a deterministic situation where you just freaking lose it, and you just start.
I
And
don't
like,
think that's true.
fair enough, Mark. It got me thinking about the idea, like, it's complicated because in those instances, we're looking at competing social mores. Like there's a social more that says you don't commit crimes, you don't hurt people, you definitely don't kill people. But there's also a social more that says you defend your children. If somebody tries to hurt your children, it's your job to protect them. And in that case, those competing mores, I think, would lead a lot of people to say, yeah, no, that father did what he was supposed to do. He protected his child. He broke another more in the process, but he was upholding a more that many people might consider more important, that you were supposed to protect your children from people that would hurt them. So I think there's a sociological aspect to it that his answer kind of touched on. And I just wanted to hear what people thought about that.
I think there's a big difference between protecting your children and going out and seeking revenge against somebody. So with determinism, and I'm not really a hard determinist, I'm more lean toward compatibilism, but I honestly don't know if determinism's a thing. We would still have to lock people up for instance, to prevent them from doing harm to others in the society, even if that person is a product of, say, their environment and the trauma that they experienced. It doesn't matter what caused it. The whole point is, how do we stop it from happening? Because we can't allow it to happen in society. So this is kind of the difference between a punitive justice system that says, hey, you did something wrong, we're going to lock you away because to punish you, and rehabilitative justice, which says, hey, you've done wrong, how do we get you to be a healthy member of society? And a lot of the most effective justice systems are rehabilitative. They're sort of things in, Netherlands and Norway. They kind of focus on how to get that person to a place where they are. So even if determinism is true, you still would have to take some kind of action to stop that person doing what they're doing, regardless of whether it's determined or not. So I don't see how it applies. I don't see the difference.
Fair enough. That's a decent point. I do want to make one slight clarification though, Mark. In the instance I mentioned, it wasn't like the gentleman went out and sought revenge. He came home from work and found a man harming his daughter, and his immediate reaction was to physically defend her. And in the process of defending her, he hurt the man so bad I believe he ended up passing away. And because
that's the moral thing to do. If you're protecting the bodily autonomy or the bodily integrity of somebody else, especially a family member, we wouldn't say, hey, you ought not jump in there and do everything possible to save another person, right? That's not what we say. I don't know why you would expect, like, that would be a case of defending your family. I don't know why we would say, hey, that's wrong to do, because of course that's right to do.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of like it did kind of have a deterministic kind of bent to it, because I doubt the man wanted to actually, beat this other man to death. He was just trying to defend his daughter, and that's a chemical reaction. That's his parental instincts kicking in. So I think there is kind of a case where you can invoke determinism as a defense if you do end up breaking a crime as a result of, inborn instincts.
Can I just talk about this determinism? Because we often get, if the world, in talking with secular versus theistic morality, if the world is deterministic, if everything has already been planned out, then why shouldn't we just have a chaotic society? Why shouldn't it just be that anything goes? And they tend to make it into this sort of ultimate nihilism, when our moral systems tend to be based on living in social groups. We've been developing them through thousands of years, and what we generally look at is, instead of free will, because there's a lot of either theological or philosophical notions, the courts tend to look at will. That is to say, did you walk through the door, or did someone throw you through the door? And we view those as two very separate occurrences. As I would just 100% agree with everything Mark said. As Mark was pointing out, I would even say it's less deterministic, as much as I would almost say evolution and a lot of things that just make us human, like empathy, wanting to protect our children. And I think the courts, generally speaking, look very favorably of that. There's always going to be situations where, unfortunately, the bad person actually has good lawyers and they get away with insert crime. But I think that the system we're trying to build is one that puts actually bad people away, reforms the vast majority of people who do harmless crimes, or victimless crimes, I should say, and we build a moral system that isn't stuck with all these thousands of years of baggage that I would assert religion comes with.
Totally. Those are some great points, Amy. I appreciate that. I want to say, I thought Jim Bob's answer was pretty creative. I think if I had him defend me in a courtroom, he might come up with some pretty good things. But I would probably be in trouble if you guys were on the prosecution there. Not that I'm trolling for legal representatives online. That was the only point I really wanted to make. I also wanted to say, breakfast tacos. I don't know how you do it, but that interaction I had with Jim Bob last night, that was the most polite, level, even-headed he's ever been talking to me. Usually he's shouting and calling me a dummy and, you know, flipping out and really getting emotional and worked up. So that, I don't know how you do it. That was impressive for sure.
I don't know
baby
either.
boy is growing up.
Just
Austin,
be
can I?
just be chill, right?
What was it?
Reference the beginning of your question. You're talking about the difference between secular and religious morality, and it really made me think about a discussion Alex O'Connor and William Lane Craig had a few months back about divine command theory.
Yeah,
I don't know if everybody saw that one.
I think I did.
The points you brought up with like Andrew E. Yates was brought up in there, in contrasting that versus like the Canaanite slaughters and stuff like that. And William Lane Craig had all the ontological defenses that, you know, are philosophically sound and whatever, but when it came to the epistemology, he fell flat on his face, and he was saying if someone was to do that and say that God commanded them to cause harm nowadays, you should just lock them up and think that they're crazy.
Yeah.
But as it stands in the Christian worldview, like a Jim Bob's or William Lane Craig's, if God really did tell you to do a heinous act, it should be admissible to get you off in court.
Totally.
It's just proving that he did that is the problem, and William Lane Craig noticed that, and he had no answers for it.
And if you ever accept one person saying that, every person is going to claim, oh, God made me do it, or the devil made me do it.
Right. There's a very good reason why we don't accept spectral evidence, which is visions, commandments from any supernatural beings, etc. But the interesting thing when I was discussing it with Jim Bob is he said that, you know, if God commanded him to, you know, unalive children, he wouldn't do it, but he did admit that it would be moral to follow what he thought God said. So, you know, that's the problem right there. That, okay, he didn't want to admit to it, but, you know, when you're talking about morality, if you're going, well, you know, this thing that I want to do, that God's told me to do, is moral, then how much of a leap do you have to make to actually do it if you already think it's moral? And it's a problem.
So I have a scary point to go with this, if you don't mind me popping in.
Yeah,
please do.
Yeah, so I have one of the Discord debates on my YouTube where a gentleman was saying that he had this exact command from God towards his family, and instead of doing this command from God towards his family, he sought medical help, and he was diagnosed with a mental ailment, and he got medicine and got better. However, he went into the Christian room, and the Christians there were saying, you should have done this command from God.
Oh, no.
And and he was telling us about it, and it absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah, that's bad. Oof.
Absolutely.
Well, it's kind of what led to the Salem witch trials and all that stuff, is just people getting wrapped up in this superstitious fervor.
So, yeah, the witch trials, that's another really good point of secular versus a theistic morality. I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah, that does tie in very well. Because, they thought they were doing a good thing. They thought they were rooting out agents of Satan. And in actuality, they were just, you know, unaliving innocent women, which is terrible.
Pretty much.
But, I think it's bringing
I know another reason why secular morality is superior.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The book used for theist morality, any of the books, they can't tell us anything about actions we're to take in the future. I often pose this question to theists: is asteroid mining immoral? Is cloning immoral? Is AI immoral? Like what kind of you really have to take some metaphorical stuff from the Bible and use some hyperbole and different things to try and come up with why it's immoral. But using sort of a secular humanist viewpoint, for instance, that I use, if it's bad for human well-being, it's immoral. We can apply it to things that the Bible doesn't even cover. And so that's why I think it's way superior, because it is flexible. It can change depending on what we learn about what's good or bad for us, or what's good or bad for society. And it isn't restricted by the dates of these books, the time that they're set in, kind of thing, and all the horrible things they want to sort of forget about.
Yeah, that is a really good point too. I thank you for bringing me up and kind of discussing this a little bit. I do want to say,
awesome.
Breakfast Tacos, I also have a YouTube channel, and I've been following your debates a lot. So if I come up on stage in the future, I've noticed you kind of plug other people's YouTube channels sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Just send me a message on YouTube. I'm really bad about it unless they send me a message or I actively know. So it's a different name than that. So feel free to just message me. But we do appreciate you coming up here. Feel free to DM me that, and I can post it in the chat.
Will do. And I just woke up myself, and some breakfast tacos sound amazing.
Cool. Thank you. Have a good one, man. And then we've got Alpha. This is this is a fun gentleman. I actually helped him to deconvert the other day in one of my videos. Well, it was on BS Lewis's channel, but...
Hello?
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Very well. How are you, Centurion? I think I've met you before. I've talked to you. I vaguely remember. I'm so sorry if I don't remember you that well, but I've certainly talked to you before.
Real quickly, 3 things before we get started. Number 1, I just want to say, Amy Newman, I'm a huge fan. I absolutely love your channel, and you're awesome.
Oh,
Right
thank
on.
you. Send that love
number
back.
2,
And to Mark, too.
Number 2, I just want to say, as the only Mexican here, I'm here to destroy breakfast tacos.
There you go.
And number 3,
fold them like a taco.
Number 3, I'm still a Catholic, still a theist, I'm still a philosopher, and tacos, you have terrible argumentation, but that's all right. I thank you for welcoming me on this channel.
That's not nice. So what's your goal today? What's going on?
Okay, so actually, I responded to B.S. Lewis's initial poll with a correction that I thought was necessary, and I noticed that in the conversation you were having, I was listening to you all over breakfast, not breakfast tacos actually, but Denny's, actually IHOP, but I was noticing that there was the category error that I saw in BS's original formalization was continuing on into the conversation. And then the last thing that I want to touch on is, which the first thing I'm going to say is that I don't agree with what was just said right now on how theism works. I don't actually think that's how religious people come to their conclusions. So I don't even agree with that whole premise, but I just want to talk about the category error that I saw in the distinctions category. Is that all right?
We can discuss both of them. That's not a problem, mate.
Okay. All right. So I noticed that you all are putting this category of gods in general as things that are intangible and don't exist. The problem is that, or if they're material and they exist, then anything can be worshipped and turned into a god. My issue here is there are intangible things about our reality that we come to conclusions on based on theory. The religious argument, the thing that Christians are claiming, not just Christians, but Hindus, whatever you want, is that we're discovering truths through reason and through theology and revelation. That's the argument that we're making. So if that argument isn't being upheld, then I think it's a distinction without a difference. For instance, and I'm going to use, I don't know if either of you are familiar, or if any of you are familiar with God, an Anatomy. I don't know if any of you have read that book. Have any of you read that one?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so it's a scholarly-ish book. It's on the popular level, but it's written to be a scholarly book. And what it is that it's talking about who God was pre-dogma. So pre-dogma, you have an anthropomorphic God
Welcome to
that's
Office
being
Centurion.
influenced by different deities, like El, like Baal, like there's
Ashera,
a
yeah.
few other ones. Yeah. And so what she does is she's breaking down all the influences, but she's holding those influences. I say she because that's the author, is she. She's breaking down, she's making connections to our modern dogmas, our modern theology, which our modern theology isn't based on that. Our modern theology is based on the developments of classic theology, which is a medieval ideas. And then before that, it's based on what we would consider like this kind of like response to the destruction of the temple, response to Roman invasion and Greek invasion. And you have a revolution on theological thought in this one region. It's not a global idea. That doesn't happen until much later. So I think that when you're categorizing ancient religion and you're categorizing modern theology, I don't even think those two things are directly connected, because if you go only based on the original inferences, you don't get to the development of an incorporeal, omniscient God. You don't get that
Classical
from the
theism,
original.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't get to classical theism if you go directly from the original idol worship that was around for thousands of years before Christianity and Judaism.
Okay, Alpha. I think the problem there is that Christians claim it as part of their God, or a being that is the three and one God, a part of the Trinity at least. And I don't know if you're a Trinitarian. I don't
I'm
know
a Catholic, so
so I presume you do, right? So so I think it wouldn't be a problem. Your argument wouldn't have a problem saying, hey, it's a different God than the what you're talking about is the ancient Canaanite pantheon, which is Yahweh, El being the father, Baal being his brother, Asherah the consort. Like, it had a wide range of these gods, and that's
and also there's influence that
Alpha,
back before then, right?
just one second, and that's where the Yahweh figure seems to have developed out of it. And you would have a point, except that the Bible claims Yahweh is the same God as Jesus.
I don't deny that. I don't see how that's a problem.
Well, if you want to say, well, it's got no relation to the foundational stuff, then what you would do is you would omit that from the text that you're saying encapsulates the religion. You would say, hey,
I don't think the text encapsulates the religion. I think those writings were selected because they build a theological idea, and that theological idea has changed over time, but you can still get there through these steps.
Okay. So what and you said it reveals truth. So what confirmed truth?
I didn't say that this time, but yes, I do believe that, yes.
Well, what sort of confirmed truths, like by everybody, what is evident as a truth that this process has revealed?
So what I was saying was that it discovers information realities just like how science does. That's the claim that Christians are making, is that we're making discoveries that are,
okay.
I'm going to use the word that you use now, because now I can't think of whatever I said originally, are truths. So these universal truths, these things like gravity and whatever else. So we're discovering morality, we're discovering human nature, and the Jewish people, or whoever wrote the original stuff before they were actually Jewish, are writing down these stories, and then later people, later groups, later societies saw these stories as useful for identifying these themes of reality. I think that's what I said earlier, was themes of reality.
Well, Alpha, I don't think that sort of gravity was discovered by ancient Jewish people in the BC. I don't think those concepts are written down by them. In fact, a lot of the concepts in physics were written down by people in Greece, and there are a wide range of them, including atheists like Epicurus and things like that. I don't see how sort of people writing down creation stories in their book gets
well, they weren't
you
creation stories, but okay.
Okay, well, what I would call, it is a story of creation, isn't it?
No, most of the Bible stories are actually polemics against the other myths that existed at the time, and the actual original myths are actually much more interesting than the ones that are in the Bible, and with
Okay.
much more detail.
Okay, but what I asked you is, what can you show me? What is evident of a truth that they have discovered about sort of reality around us? Like, if you say to me, "Hey, what can you show that, say, science has discovered that is evident about the world around us?" I can say, "Hey, well, there's gravity, there's laws of thermodynamics, there's all kinds of physics, there's aerodynamics, there's computer science, there's I could go on forever." And what I'm asking you is, what has been
So there's an
confirmed
error.
as
There's an
a
error in the way that you're wording that to me. I just want to ask some. I'll answer that, but I want to ask this right real quick. So, if let's say something in science, let's not talk about religion for 2 seconds. If something in science is discovered in Japan, and something in science is discovered in California, and they're discovered 10 days apart, they're two separate scientific discoveries, but they both are discovering the same thing. Would you say that the discovery that happened 2 days earlier has to have influenced the discovery that happens 2 days later, even though the two scientists never talked, never did research together, don't have the same streams of information coming to them?
Well, here's the thing about that they will come up with the same answer.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so what religions have come up with the same answer about a truth about the universe?
So morality, when it comes to
Really?
emotions, when it comes to
you think religions share the same morality?
not all moral decisions, but yes, they come to the same conclusions and they're reading the same data. We're all reading the same data. Yes.
Well, they might sort of come to similar, but they don't come to the same conclusions. The morality of Islam is not the same as the morality of Christianity.
Really? So there's no connection between the morality of Islam, which is a direct outgrowth of Christianity, specifically Christian heretical groups. You're telling me there's no connection between the morality?
I'm not saying there's no connection, but they're not the same. Like, for instance, alcohol is prohibited in Islam. It's not in Christianity. That's a moral
alcohol is also considered evil in several versions of Christianity.
You're a Catholic.
That doesn't mean I don't read a lot of books of a lot of different religions.
Yeah, but don't you believe the blood of Christ, the transmutation, that you drink the blood of Christ by drinking wine?
We don't believe in transmutation. We believe in
transubstantiation. Yeah, sorry, I misspoke. Yeah, transubstantiation. So, but don't you drink wine for that?
Catholics do, but if you're a Baptist or certain types of Protestants, you're actually drinking grape juice because you don't want to. Huh?
Aren't you a Catholic?
I'm a Catholic, yes.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that Islam and Catholicism came to a truth about the universe on this thing, and they're diametrically opposed. With science, what you're not finding is the total disagreement. If you're saying somebody disguised,
if you're saying there's no disagreement in science,
hang on, Alpha.
There's disagreement in science, and you know
Alpha. Just let me speak. Let me speak. Why won't you let me speak?
Allow him a moment, Alpha, please.
So if if a scientist discovers something in Japan and a scientist discovers something in America, they're not going to be diametrically opposed like that if you're saying they've discovered a scientific truth. Now, yeah, they might disagree, and we will do further testing to try and find out which one is right. But you're sort of claiming that you can, you're getting the same thing with religion. And I don't see it. I see a really wide range of moral diversity through a whole lot of religions. Some of them think that Sunday's a holy day. Some of them don't. Some of them have, there's a really wide range. So what I'm asking you is what is evident of a confirmed truth. Like, I mean, we've got gravity, for instance, okay? We've confirmed it. Would you agree with that?
In the realm of science, sure.
Yeah, so what can you show me that is a evident, confirmed truth about the universe that religions have discovered?
I mean, the first answer is the one you're going to disagree with the most, which is God exists. But if you want a more,
You can show me God,
I believe in God, yes.
but can you show me God? Because if it's something that we can't falsify, we can't test, we can't see if it's real, then it's not a confirmed, evident truth. So the only thing that says that it's a truth is you're saying, well, I believe it's true. And that sort of begs the question that, well, it's not really confirmed to me if you're just saying, hey, well, I believe it's true. Whereas something like gravity, I can demonstrate it.
Let's move on from that point, because I said that's going to be the most contentious. But I would say,
okay,
a murder is wrong is something that most religions agree with, and I don't care about an outlier that says something different, or that a verse that can be reinterpreted a different way. That's a general conclusion that most religions come to. Stealing is wrong. There's another general truth that they come to. These are all moral truths.
Well, I think that's a general statement that most civilizations would come to. I mean, you don't even need religion for that one, because if you just allow people to run around murdering people, then civilization's going to collapse real fast.
I would disagree with the idea that you don't need religion to have the outgrowth of civilization. The way that civilization evolved, it evolved alongside religion. Without it, you don't have the same growth in civilization. All religions, by the way. I'm not talking about Christianity.
I'm just wondering how you know that.
Because I went to college just like you, and I studied.
Well, where's your counterfactual? Where's the sort of society with no religion that didn't go anywhere?
Because we don't have that example. All we have is a world history where religion developed alongside it. That is how it developed. And to argue against that is to argue against reality, and is to go into fantasy land, which is what you're exactly trying to say that religious people are doing.
No, I'm saying there's no counterfactual to what you've said. There's no example of a society being completely non-religious. In fact, I think I could probably point to things like the Golden Age of Islam, which sort of ended when they became more theocratic, and that sort of brought an end to the Golden Age. It was one of many factors. I won't say it's the only factor, but definitely it was a factor, as well as the Dark Ages, where, inquisitions and that kind of thing. It was the Age of Enlightenment when we really did come out of the Dark Ages. So I think I could make a case that I don't think it is necessarily religion that's don't get me wrong, it's definitely been helpful in some ways to society. I certainly won't argue that, but I don't think you can sort of go, well, you wouldn't have this society without. I just don't think that's true. I don't think there's a counterfactual for that.
And I know you want to respond, Alpha, but afterwards, I just want to ask you a question.
Okay, cool.
Me too.
So, all right. Victor, I'm gonna end my response with this, and I'll let the other two. Actually, as soon as Amy talked, my brain went away. So go ahead.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Well, I guess I just wanted to ask, because you said one of the universals was murder. Sometimes we separate out murder and killing and all these.
Killing, right.
But I would ask, imagine you were back in time and you saw Jesus up on that cross, a man that the Christians say has done nothing wrong. Would you take him off it?
Would I take Jesus off the cross? No, that would be extremely blasphemous and wrong.
And yet he might if he saw you. I mean, don't you think? I'm trying to think how that goes with don't kill, don't murder. Because from my view, it's killing an innocent man.
So
man.
The problem would be there's a theological response to that, which is, well, Jesus didn't die. So, he died on the cross, his body died, and then he went to Sheol or hell, or however you want to translate it, to free the souls there, which is sometimes Abraham's bosom. And then he gets resurrected into heaven, but God himself never ceased to exist. And the Christian argument is that Jesus was God the entire time. The 3-in-1.
I guess my question to that would be, couldn't we say that many people on the cross basically went right to heaven right after they died if they were...
No, if they weren't baptized, they went to hell. The majority of the world is in hell.
Oh.
And the majority of the world will always be in hell, yeah.
But doesn't Wouldn't that sound like an evil god?
No, not at all. The default is hell. That's Jesus is the lifeboat. He's the raft. He's the lifeline. He's the one true way. Everyone else, everything else, including myself, could already be in hell.
But aren't you saying that there was people that were good, they lived good lives, and even though they were being nice, kind, caring to other people, even though they were born before Jesus, they're actually being tortured in hell forever?
Well, torture is a relevant new idea added to that idea. Hell itself isn't actually in the Bible. It's not actually a concept. It's a bad mistranslation that happened. Dan McKellen actually has some good videos on it. I'd recommend. But the idea of eternal separation from God, that acknowledgement, that knowledge is supposed to be the torture itself. It's void, it's chasm. It's a re-textualization of the idea of Tiamat and of chaos and of a few other ancient gods. That's how we get to our interpretation of hell. But yes, the default is to die the true death. So hell is just dying the death of death. So you get resurrected only to die again, and you'll never be back. You'll never exist again. It's lack of existence. It's lack of life. It's lack of being. This is theologically consistent, going all the way back to the church fathers and even going to the rabbinical fathers. That's how it's traditionally interpreted. Modern Protestant reinterpretations of hell are not relevant because they are based on Dante's Inferno, which is a Catholic fiction and a poetry. So I kind of think it's funny that they're using a Catholic idea, which is kind of cool for me because I'm Catholic, but they've kind of taken it into a direction that we don't have any way of knowing what hell is or isn't, regardless of the mistranslation of the word.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So from what it sounds from that explanation, if you were a child, you died from something like a Pompeii level accident, like a volcano
You're in hell.
before Jesus. Well, you
You're
say
in
you're
hell.
in hell, but that means separation from God. But does that mean you
Correct.
no longer exist?
More than likely. Like I can't give a definitive, but on a just based on theological readings, I would say that would be a lack of existence, yes.
Okay, because I mean that's what atheists believe anyway, and that's what I think.
Yeah, that's sorry to interrupt, but that's what
No,
a
you're
lot of
fine.
Catholics, especially apologists, are trying to say to a lot of atheists. But then we have people like not Ken Ham, who's the guy, Cliff Kaninsky or whatever his name is, saying exact opposite of
Neckley.
what we're saying, and he's way more popular than what we're saying.
Neckley. Cliff and Stuart Neckley?
Yeah.
Sure. And I guess the problem that us atheists, I mean, it sounds like a better version of hell because, I mean, when
But
you
it's still
tell it
hell.
as torture. But what I would just say is from our perspective, there is no one to come down and say this is the actual one. It seems like all of the theists are just arguing about which one is the true scripture. Again, I would prefer, I guess, that over the Dante's Inferno, whatever. However, that is what the majority of the Christians are unfortunately pushing right now.
Unfortunately for me, the only answer that I have is that, well, that's why I'm Catholic, is because the Catholic Church has a magisterium that helps us come to these conclusions. But that's not a very good answer for a non-Catholic. And that's where me and Trent Horn and a few other Catholic people online disagree with each other. But that's a different thing altogether.
Do
Yes, you had a question?
Yeah, hey, old friend.
Hello.
I just want to let
Did
you
you
know
see me
that
ask Tux? Oh, go ahead.
I just want to let you know that Kip Davis is watching you right now, and I don't want you to get
Oh,
nervous.
Oh no!
I know how much you esteem the gentleman.
Well, don't
Tell
tell
Kip
Kip that I asked
Davis,
Tux to marry me.
or I'm sure Kip Davis can hear me, but I sent you a DM on, or I sent you a friend request on Discord because your DMs are locked, bro.
So, harkening back to the conversation that you were listening to during breakfast and before we had any guests on the panel.
Yes, sir.
Can you just answer this question for me? Do you exist?
I believe that I do.
Do you exist?
I believe that I do.
You believe you exist?
I believe I exist. I don't have proof that I exist, but I believe I exist.
Okay. And by exist, what do you mean by that?
As far as I can tell, I have rational thoughts. I have, I can touch and feel. I can come to conclusions. I believe I have free will of some sort, whether it be limited or absolute. That's debatable. But if I don't have free will, I am not a real being. I'm not something that is conscious. If I don't have consciousness, then I am not actually perceiving the things that I am perceiving. If the connections in my mind, because I'm dyslexic, if my connections in my mind are actually incorrect, and what I think I'm touching, let's say the table that's in front of me, but I'm actually touching air, then I don't have any actual perception, and therefore I might not be a real being. I could only think I'm a real being.
Would you put the probabilities of you existing higher or lower than God existing?
I put the probability of God existing much higher than the probability of me existing.
Really?
Yes.
Good to know. Why do you formulate it that way?
Because if things exist, they were created. If things were created, something created it. It's a stupid circular object. If I only think I exist because some omnipotent being is giving me the delusion that I have free will, then I'm not a real subject. I'm not a real person. I don't have a real soul. I'm just an automaton living out programming in my mind. I'm not a real thing. So either I'm real, and therefore, if I'm real, something created me, or I am not real, and something created me. So therefore, something can still have created me: human, monster, robot, AI, God, or I really exist, and therefore I am. But I don't know.
So
Can I jump
it's like
in after you, BS? I know you want to say something, but
Yeah.
after you.
yeah, just so you put it maybe 50% that you exist and 100% God exists.
I would put it at 99% God exists, 40% I exist.
And when you're
But I
saying
really,
real,
really do trust that I believe. Yeah, I really do think I
What do you-
exist.
when you're saying real, what do you mean by the word real?
Substantive. I can't think of the other word that follows substantive. There's 3 words to it. It's from Philosophy 101, and that was over 20 years ago for me. I'm very old. I'm sorry, Amy. I'm very old.
We're not judging you on your
Not at all.
vocabulary. Just give us a rough estimate so we can kind of understand.
That things that I do have impact in me. Whatever that word is. It's not consent. It's not. Whatever that word is. So yeah.
Contingency?
So like what I do makes things happen. So I have actual whatever in the universe. So those 2 words. I have needs. I have thoughts, and my actions actually have consequences. That would be reality. That would be real.
I'll pass it to Amy.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, see if I could sell you on what I believe is a separation between created and formed, because I believe that we are formed, and I only think that there are actually evidence for one version of creators. I would argue, and I'll go into more detail if you want me to, that only animals are the only branch of life that we know of that have ever created anything. Not saying they're the only ones that ever will, or we won't find out others, but the way that we come about is we form naturally, just like trees, who I will actually argue also have sex, male and female. Use this as a way to naturally occur.
I don't have a problem with that at all. I would argue, if I was talking to a Protestant, which there's no Protestants in the room, but if I was, I would argue that Catholics are both and, so we can both hold your view, Amy, and hold a theistic view at the same time.
Well, I'll admit, actually, that is what I like about Catholicism, is that you guys seem to be more open to science, like evolution, Big Bang Theory. I'll give you, however, the other side. A lot of skeptics or atheists sometimes say, however, Catholics use that as a guard, or the moderates often use that as a guard for the fundamentalists out there. Of course, you will say a lot of these fundamentalists are many of these Protestant branches that come from America. I can't say we don't export, unfortunately, creationism from America.
Mhm.
However, yeah, I guess I like that you accept science, but then I guess I would just keep on pressing you then on the literal versions of your own interpretation if you have them.
So I'm going to end here, and then whoever wants to say anything to me in response, I'm welcome to hear it. But this is going to be kind of my final thought, which is, for Catholics, we're a universal church. So Catholic means universal, not as in universalist, not as in we control the whole world, but as in we have multiple churches and multiple traditions within what we call sacred tradition. So we have mystical Christianity, which is part of the Desert Fathers, which goes back to Orthodoxy, which is part of a tradition that I practice. I used to be a religious before I became a more common Catholic, a more lay Catholic. I was originally a religious. Before that, I was a Taoist, so let's not worry about that. And we also have a more legalistic version of Catholicism, and this is stuff where the rad trads come out of. But if you ignore the radical traditionalist, conservative traditional Catholicism, which is sometimes called the Novus Ordo, or the regular order, this is going to be the more Protestant-friendly version of Catholicism. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think you need both. I think you need both the worship and the science and the history, but you also need the mystical and the theological and the metaphysical. Without both, you're not really living a full religious life, in my opinion. So while I accept your half condemnation of crazy Protestant thoughts, I have to, as an honest person, say that those crazy thoughts stem from their inclusion in the Catholic tradition before they broke off after the Protestant Reformation. And that's where I'll finish my thought. Any last objections or comments, I'm welcome to hear it, and then I'm good to go.
Well, I would briefly like to investigate. You said your second problem. Sorry, I just look at my notes here. The second problem that you had was that coming to the conclusion that morality, I believe you're talking about morality based upon the Bible, that I made a statement that, hey, you look to the Bible for moral guidance kind of thing. And you said that's misrepresentative of what it actually is. I think that was your objection.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to quickly
Yes.
spell out what your objection is?
So Catholics and some Orthodox rabbinical fathers, I'm bracketing that for reasons that are important later, like for instance, Kip Davis comes in. But what we're arguing is that morality existed or always existed. Like there's an actual moral truth, and what the Bible is doing, it's identifying these moral truths. And then what later theologians are doing are saying that through the development of religion, we can find a single univocal voice, which is where Dan and Kip and everyone disagrees with Catholics. So you'll see the secular scholars agree with us all the way until we get to the univocal voice. And then once we get there, we break off. But what we're saying is that God was speaking to us long before the Bible was ever written, long before Judaism or Christianity ever existed. And all the religions of the world are misunderstandings, are different degrees of truth. This is actually in the Catechism, by the way. I'm not just saying this off the top of my head. Are different degrees of truth. And the further away from the truth that you get, the more wacky the ideas are. And the closer you are to the truth, the more concrete the concepts are. And so Catholics, believe it or not, I know this might sound crazy, would think most atheists that are reasonable, I'm not talking about the anti-theists or the people who just want to go, say non-existence is real or something like that, that atheists are closer to the truth than many Protestants. Because at least you guys are dealing with science, evolution, history, like you're dealing with real things that really exist. So we would say that atheists are very, very close to the truth. While a Protestant who's a Unitarian and believes that God created the universe 6,000 years ago, and that we have to go and hurt and attack people that are different than us, we'd say, well, okay, that guy's way further from the truth than the atheist who just doesn't believe that there's a God. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I do see what you're saying. Like, I get what you're saying, and I kind of I must admit that I was kind of broaching my evangelicals is usually the people that you're usually talking to, so I do apologize if it came across like that. But if you're sort of saying there's moral facts, which it sounds like you're saying there are objective moral facts in the universe, how do you resolve a difference in two Catholics disagreeing on a moral fact? Where do you get your guidance from?
So there's actually two answers to it. The first one is the Newman answer, not Amy Newman, but a different Newman. He's a Catholic philosopher, and he talks about what's called the development of truth. If you actually go watch the debate, which I'm going to do a review of James White versus Joe Heschmeyer that happened last night, that is them talking about this problem. Protestants reject the idea of theological development, and therefore there's not room for disagreement, so you end up having to create a new denomination if you disagree on a point of salvation. Catholics don't have a problem with theological development. The problem that we have with each other is that which development is the correct development that stems from tradition, and which is a novelty or heresy that we shouldn't follow. And that's where you get people like Tyler Marshall, myself, and Trent Horn disagreeing, because we're all three on different sides of this argument. We all agree that people like, I can't remember, there's a bishop in San Francisco that we all agree are wrong. So if you go so far off the page that you're no longer talking about the traditional things at all, we all agree that person's wrong. But where we disagree with each other is on which next step is the correct development and not a heresy.
Right. So what would you use to show that you are right over another Catholic?
We use the Church Fathers. That's what we go to. We go to the Church Fathers, and we go to the ecumenical councils. And the ecumenical councils. And they all have to agree. If they all don't agree, then we can't use them as a proof.
Okay. So what happens if you're both claiming and they don't agree and the ecumenical fathers are vague? What then? This is this is actually in canon. This is actually part of Catholic law. If enough Catholics disagree on an issue that is not presented in the Bible, then the church... Wait, hold on. Back up a sec. You didn't mention the Bible at all. Why would the Bible be involved?
Because there's 4 pillars or 4 columns of truth that Catholics use. We use the magisterium, the Bible, liturgy, and holy tradition.
So you do go to the Bible on guidance and how to resolve moral disagreements.
Yes, it's one of 4 different equal authorities.
So how is my...
It's not the sole authority. So that's very different than a Protestant where they're just going to the Bible. Ours is just one of 4 different pieces.
Right, okay. I mean, that's fine, but just say you disagree with Catholics, the ecumenical fathers don't resolve it, the other pillars don't resolve it. Do you then get your moral guidance from the Bible?
Yes, but the Church Fathers are the ones who copied and wrote down the Bible, so their commentaries on the Bible are authoritative because they're the ones who wrote it. So, like, their teacher is the one who told them what it meant, and they wrote down the actual meaning, and they discuss it. It's that kind of thing. But we don't have dogmatic teachings on... real quick, just so we don't get to a confusion in a second. We don't have very many doctrinal statements on the Bible. We got like 4, and most of them have to do with the Virgin Mary. Only one of them is about Jesus, and that's the Holy Trinity. So we have very little dogmatic statements on the Bible because most Catholics, regardless of what we all say on apologetical videos, don't read the Bible. They just go to church and that's it. Most Catholics only hear the Bible when they do readings in Mass. Very few actually do readings at home.
So something like colonization of another planet, for instance, how do you tell the morality of that using the 4 pillars that you're talking about?
So we actually have a ruling on that, and that we've already said that we can't do that.
You can't do that?
Nope, we can't. It's not allowed.
Why?
Because it's immoral, because of what was done through example, what was done to the Native Americans and to the Africans by colonization.
No. I mean colonization of another planet.
Yes. So based on our colonization of our planet and what the bad things we did here, we shouldn't do it to another planet if there's life on another planet.
I never said there was life. Like Mars, for instance.
So colonization of Mars is okay as long as we don't exploit the planet. I believe that is the official ruling from the Catholic magisterium.
So how did you get that from, like, how did the magisterium come to that conclusion?
Through its examples in history when we tried doing it ourselves and we had disastrous effects on this planet. When we ourselves did this error.
But that sounds like you're just sort of employing a secular sort of consequentialism and saying every time we've colonized something, a lot of suffering has occurred.
I want to be very clear before I clarify on that. When I'm saying we, I don't mean human beings. I mean the Catholic Church itself did this and we messed up.
Yes.
So that's why
Yes.
we know not to do it now.
Yeah, but that's not any kind of Catholic, a theological moral system. That is basically saying, hey, we have done this in the past and it's led to some very bad consequences and people have really hated the church for doing it. And so we won't do that again because it causes a lot of harm. It doesn't really sound like there's any kind of scripture or any kind of thing that says, hey, colonizing Mars is good or bad.
So based on the Bible, notice what I'm doing here. Based on the Bible, we could also have learned these lessons. So we're saying that this lesson that we learned in real life is consistent with the lesson taught by the Bible when the Israelites in the fictionalized version of the conquest also had these disastrous consequences and destroyed people. Hey, we should have learned that the first time. So therefore, this experience that we have now or had in the 1500s is consistent with the lesson that was trying to be taught by the Bible that we misunderstood. So therefore, let's not do this mistake again.
Well, it sounds like a sort of complete 180 from, hey, let's go out and convert people because the Bible says that, to, hey, let's not go out and convert people. Well, I'm sort of
we can still convert. We can still convert. We should still preach.
Well, I'm really talking about the conquistadors and the sort of conquest of the New World. Like, it seems a 180 for the Catholic Church to say, hey, before we had this moral thing of we've got to go out and convert by the sword if necessary because they need to be saved. And now you've sort of said, well, now they've come to the decision of, well, it's a really bad thing. It just doesn't sound like a sort of, divine, divine virtues or anything like that to me. It sounds like it's consequentialism.
Why couldn't God be speaking through history and be speaking? I'm just asking you. I'm actually asking. I'm not being a jerk.
Well, that's
why
a good
couldn't
question.
God be speaking through history and through things that we learn empirically?
Well, that's a good question. Why didn't he tell the Spanish not to do that?
We eventually did.
He eventually
wrote decrees, yeah. Saying,
don't you think it was a little late?
You're not supposed to. I make plenty of mistakes in history myself, so I would not hold the church to a higher standard than I hold myself. Does God make mistakes? I don't know. It depends on how you read the Bible. I don't think he does.
Well, it's odd, don't you think, that sort of you're saying, hey, he did tell us eventually after, the rivers of blood through the Americas.
The Catholic Church argument is that God was always saying this. That's why that fictionalized story exists in the Bible, is to tell us not to do this thing. We just misunderstood it when we read it the first time, or first 100 times.
Didn't God regret flooding the whole world, even metaphorically?
In the Bible, I believe that's what he says, yeah.
Wouldn't that be considered a mistake?
No, because again, that's an anthropomorphization. Someone help me with pronunciation of God.
Anthropomorphization. But even if it is that or a metaphor or whatever, it's still a literal regret, right?
No, it's not a literal regret. It's a metaphorical understanding. So people are looking at these different stories from different time periods, and then later they're reinterpreting history, and based on the best evidence that they have of what they think actually happened, which we now know didn't happen, they write these stories as arguments against other cultures' approaches. And then
is that a literal God in the Noah's? Is that a literal God in the Noah's Ark story?
I would say that that's their best representation of God in that story. Yes.
Literally or metaphorically?
That writer's best interpretation of what he thought God was when he wrote writers, that there's like 10 or 20 writers. Who knows how many people touched that thing before it hit pen and paper.
So the writer interpreted God as regretting.
Is regretting, correct.
that didn't really happen.
Well, the flood didn't really happen, unless you want to say the flood really happened.
The regret didn't really happen.
Well, the regret is an expression of people's understanding of the Great Deluge, which they thought was a real thing at that time in many different cultures, but we now know didn't actually happen.
I'm
But
not
it was
worried
them
about the
telling
event.
a
I'm worried
story.
about the reaction. Because the reaction is what Mark was saying was a mistake, and you're saying he doesn't make mistakes, and so the reaction would be regret, and regret
the
is
reaction is the
mistakes.
writer realizing that this is a wrong thing to do, which is something that we should have realized when we were trying to conquer the whole world and create Christendom, which is one of the big problems with Christian nationalism, is they're misreading the Bible and they're taking an example of a terrible consequence as a command, which goes back to the command theory stuff that I believe Victor was talking about earlier. Is that right, Victor?
Mark, not Victor.
Mark, I'm sorry, Mark, but he's not here anymore, right? Okay, yeah.
Who, me?
Mark is here still.
Oh,
I'm
Mark.
absolutely here.
And,
It's okay.
and this
BS
has
just
been
jumped
going
in.
on for quite a while, so let's go ahead and make a few final points, and then
I'll just wrap up really quickly. I think that sort of you've said, hey, there's moral facts, and I don't see moral facts. But granted, you believe in moral facts. I'm not questioning that. But I find it hard to believe because sort of the church has always said they've got moral facts, but they've done these sort of atrocities in the past, saying they had the moral facts. So it seems to me more like they had these ideas of what was moral. There was some really bad outcomes, and they've changed their position based upon those bad outcomes rather than any kind of moral facts that happen to be out there, because they thought they had the moral facts before. And if that is the case, then I'm really sorry, Alpha, I'm not confident you have access to moral facts or even they exist at the moment, because the Catholic Church has said they had them in the past.
I don't have an objection for you. I simply submit to the will of the church on that fact, and I submit to the evidence of history, and I agree with history, so it's fine.
Okay.
Amy, real quick, bye. VS, bye. Tacos, bye. And Vector, bye. Anything you guys want to add before I click out?
That's Mark.
No, great to talk to you, Alpha. It was really nice.
It was nice talking to you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you, Alpha.
Bye.
See you.
We've got the Trump guy, Septonomian. He's been waiting patiently, so I invited him up here.
Well, thank you for your patience. I know it was a long conversation. I enjoyed that conversation. I always like talking. I remember Centurion. He's a pretty nice guy.
He's a class act.
Conversation.
Septonomian, I invited you back, or I invited you up.
No, you got Wise Ape.
Oh yeah, he was here at the start.
Oh, never mind. Okay,
yeah, he had to step away for a little bit. And if anybody else in the audience would like to raise your hand, feel free to raise your hand. So, what did y'all think about Alpha's position while we're waiting for him to come up?
Well, I'll say the one thing that I'll push back on the most. First of all, he said nice things to me. I'm just going to send love right back to him. But
don't push back on that.
Exactly. Yet the one thing I will say, and it's one thing I'll continue to push on, is how much is metaphor, how much is literal. Because sure, the Christians here tend to be way more fundamental. And the Catholics tend to lean more on metaphor. However, I still go back to pushing back on the central miracles. I don't think that there was a perfect man that was resurrected from the dead, nor do I think there is a son of God. And so maybe we'll have even more conversations. Like I said, welcome to come on and we'll talk about that. But sometimes I think the saner, more metaphorical, moderate theists give coverage, even though they don't want to. Of course, they view them as crazy. But for the fundamentalists that truly believe the world is 6,000 to 10,000 years old, the Big Bang isn't real, evolution isn't true. But good conversation. Anyone else?
Yeah, I suppose we didn't get to it, but people claiming there's moral facts. I get that there's sort of similarities between morality. I get that there's parallels we can draw, but I think that that's more just because we're human and as sort of social creatures, whatever you believe it to be, social things. That there are going to be some overlap between them. But if you look at a timeline of societies throughout the ages, there's been some very different moral systems. I can point to, say, the Incas, for instance, as being, completely different in their moral outlook. So I think sort of the argument from moral diversity that if we had moral facts, we would. I think that we should be able to discover them just like any facts and have agreement on them, but it doesn't seem to be coming. And that worries me, that there's these moral facts out there and nobody can actually show them is a little bit worrying to me.
What I'd like to bring up is that we have a kind of a running theme with Alpha, and before that we had Ink. That kind of harkens to my point that we were talking about at the very beginning of the show, is that to nail down the definition for exist. We've seen a guy who doesn't even know if he exists, and he doubts it less than he doubts it more than God itself existing. And then we had Hank, where he thinks everything
penis.
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay.
Wow, what intelligent conversation. Yeah.
Wow, dude. Cool.
That was
So
that was a
that's-
good one. That's
That's
the
just my
best theists
point.
have.
Yeah, that's just my
Look,
point on the issue.
I liken theism to a product, right? And all products have advertising. And, we have regulations when we advertise things like things that purport to have attributes they don't, right? They have warning labels on them, or this has not been approved.
If you have insane background noise right now, I'd recommend going into voice and video under settings and turning on your noise suppression. It's called Crisp. Best in the market. Doesn't cost anything. Just click Crisp and it'll fix it.
Is it better?
Maybe a little. Did you turn on the noise suppression?
No, but I just moved away from.
Just go into your settings real quick and hit voice and video, and then noise suppression, Crisp.
And if your computer burns down, it's not Taco's fault. This is the Theist Helpline, and some theists need more help than others. So, Schadenfreude, you need help. We can help you, but yeah, you need a lot.
Yeah, I mean it's just part of the program, right?
Okay,
Oh yeah.
I'm back.
Sounds much better.
But don't we have like some sort of strategy when it comes to advertising? A product. What the claims are. What they're permitted to. Slap onto their product, like when it comes to like the Food and Drug Administration, or like certain products like cigarettes, like you're not allowed to say like smoking these cigarettes will make you cool, right? Like things like that. And so like theism, the theists, they seem to get this pass where they can make all these claims and they don't have to demonstrate the validity of anything.
Yeah, I
don't
think it's
disagree
that.
with
Yeah, I which is why we're kind of doing epistemology here. We're kind of saying, well, why do you believe what you believe? I think it's fine to sort of say you believe something, but if you're not providing the reasons why, then I'm not really sure that you can know any of this stuff because you don't have any valid reasons for or justified reasons for actually believing it. But people can believe whatever they want.
I
It's not
can't
like
hear
we can stop
anybody
them.
now.
Uh-oh, trouble.
Dun, dun.
worries.
And for anyone in the audience, I will say God doesn't exist.
I mean, that's
But I do
blatantly
find it
obvious.
irritating. I do find it really irritating when theists sort of make these promises to people in vulnerable states, like, God's going to cure you, or God's going to do this, or God's going to do that, because we have the data and it doesn't work. They try to substitute.
Just real quick, when I went into settings, I muted. I muted. I could not hear. I don't know if you heard what I said or not.
No worries. You don't need to tell us the technical stuff. It's not a big deal. Thank you, though, Wise.
Yeah, it does sound way sharper, way clearer. It makes a hell of a difference. Wise. I
was just saying I muted you guys on my end. I couldn't hear any responses. But yeah, what do you think about that? Like the theism is a product, and they sort of get away with claiming, wow, we can cure your amputeeism, right? Or you're gonna get a special lottery ticket winning number when you die.
Yeah, the false advertising aspect of it is troublesome, especially when the faith is like so heaped upon the believer that if the healing doesn't happen, it's their fault. So it's not the product that failed; it's their use of the product that failed. Yes. Which is doubly diabolic.
At the very minimum, right? They should have these statements have not been approved by the FDA or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Is religion a food or drug? It might count as a drug, actually. Now that I mention it.
Like these statements have not been approved by ChatGPT. So, hey, maybe that's what we're looking for, right? That's the agency, right? That it has to pass the approval.
Well, we recently went through that with the C-19 stuff and how the blood of Jesus and blowing the wind of God and all this different stuff, and encourage people not to seek help. And
look, this is the Helpline. This is exactly what we should be promoting. Like, these theists need help. They're being promised these attributes, right? If they'll just ascribe to this or that dogma or theology, right? And they're being abused. That's why I became a pastor, so I can help the theists.
Yeah. My concern is a lot deeper than that. It runs to religious trauma syndrome. It's not in the DRM-5 yet, but there is talk of putting it in there. People that have psychological trauma from their religious experiences. A lot of this is something called scrupulosity, and that's where you essentially have rituals that are supposed to take away your sin, or you have rituals to feel like you fit into your worldview, and it becomes almost an obsessive compulsive thing in some people. So you will go through these motions again and again, trying to purge yourself of any evil or try to get rid of sin, and it becomes an obsessive thing in the life and really causes disorder. So religious trauma is a thing. I do some work with Recovering from Religion, really great organization. If you do need help with, to talk to somebody about stuff like that, I highly recommend them.
Yeah, not only is theism designed to create the trauma by creating these concepts of sin and guilt and shame, but when they find people who have trauma outside of the theology, right? Let's say, well, they're just living a rough life, right? They're right away oh, we got the solution for you. It's almost as if they're oh, do you have a headache? Here, try some meth, right? And I'm equating the theology to meth. It's
Faithium. It's Faithium.
Yeah, it's they're just
opium.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up something interesting there, Wiser, and that's the difference between guilt and shame. And they're two very distinct things. Guilt can be useful in some very sort of, some cases. It can be useful to prevent behavior that would be harmful to yourself. It can be useful. Shame never is. And The difference between them is shame is internalized. So what that means is that if I feel guilty about doing something, right? If I feel guilty about I didn't show up for an interview or have a collab with someone, I don't show up. Guilt is saying, oh, I did something wrong, sorry about it. Shame is when you internalize it, saying, sorry? Okay. Shame is sort of saying, well, I'm a bad person because I did this thing, right? Like I'm inherently a bad person. And that shame is where religions lie. They convince you that you're a despicable, horrible, evil person because you've simply made mistakes. And then they say, well, we can take away that feeling of shame by offering you a solution when you shouldn't be internalizing that guilt at all. Right? Like, shame is never useful. It's never helpful. It's something that sort of I would say that we don't try and put upon ourselves. We may do wrong things, but that doesn't mean that you're inherently a bad person. Because if someone feels shame and goes, well, I'm a bad person, they're going to immediately go out and do it again. Because that's what they think they are, is just a bad person. So you get, religious people that will just keep doing this. It's really important that we don't sort of take that on board as who you are, as an identity. And that's what religion does. It tells you some religions do. They tell you you're a bad, horrible, despicable, fallen, you're as rags, and we've got the very thing to make you feel better. Well, they're the ones that made you feel bad in the first place. Guilt's fine, not shame.
Yeah, if anything, that's why we should make, at least especially here in other societies, we should reform prisons so that we are really just not making it into, I hate to say criminal factories, but we're giving them alternatives. We're giving them education so that they're able to do something when they get out and not go back in. And unfortunately, the best way, at least here, is to actually, I say here, I know in other societies as well, if you convert to a religion, it looks fantastic in front of court, which it should not be. And so there should be alternatives, and should be trying to actually help people.
No, I totally agree. I really think that, when we look at the statistics, rehabilitative justice it's so far superior, because you're not saying, hey, you'll never be worth anything, and the system in America, I'm really sorry to throw shade at your country, Amy, but
oh no,
it's an industry where they use them for work. They're basically cheap labor, and that's terrible. Like I get doing work programs to help people, get back into the world.
Can I tell you the most fucked up? First of all, I will totally agree with you. Okay, I love my country, and yet the things that are almost glaringly obvious bad and have been that way for a while, like our prison system, they are, as far as the Constitution considers them, many of them are slaves. It is the only slavery. And I know a lot of people go, oh, Amy, you just blue-haired liberal. No, I mean that. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not being metaphoric. I mean, our Constitution allows for one group of slaves. It used to allow for more groups of slaves. Now, the only group of slaves is prisoners. Now, most people will say, well, isn't it okay that insert terrible person is, a slave? And you go, I mean, maybe the most horrible, brutal person, but like the people who just do victimless crimes, we're going to turn them into slaves. We are going to make them work hard, long hours because of a marijuana conviction. So, yeah. Happy notes.
Yeah.
But I mean, our healthcare system. Again, I always say I am a moderate, even though I'm a liberal. I think that we should have healthcare system without having some sort of not greed, profit motive. I was going to say greed. That really is the nicer word, profit motive. And yet, our country, and many of my countrymen will call me a communist for this, but I would say that most other developed nations, this is what they do. They give healthcare to, their brothers and sisters because they see it as an investment, not as a handout, but as this makes our country healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know of a lot of people on the right in America that, use Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act provides them with health insurance when they wouldn't have it ordinarily. So I don't think that's necessarily a leftist position at all, Amy.
Oh, there's many people that I would say on the conservative right that would defend it in many other countries. But welcome, Manar. How are you? And what are your thoughts? What do you believe and why?
Yeah, we have Manar with Manar Reports here.
Yeah, I saw your debate with Grayson. Interesting. You're muted, I think, Manar.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? How are you? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep. Welcome, Mar.
Hey, guys. Yeah, I'm a total theist. I believe in traditional morality. I believe it's extremely necessary. I think secular morality is detrimental to any society. And yeah, that's my argument. I have a lot of arguments, scientific, moral, logical, whatever you would like. I'm ready to debate.
Well, I'm happy to talk about morality. Where does your morality come from?
Yeah, so there's always a reference. There has to be a reference. So morality, we believe, is an objective view. Just like anything is objective in reality, you can interpret it in a subjective way that doesn't change its objective view. So if I interpret, for example, killing is wrong, doesn't mean that killing is good, doesn't mean that killing becomes automatically good. Morality is actually objective. My interpretation of it does not, so it's mind independent. So my interpretation of it doesn't change the moral compass, and therefore it's an objective view, and therefore I think it's extremely necessary to find the correct references, to find the correct morality as an objective view. And that's why I always use a good reference. I always use the best reference I have available. I don't come up with my own moral compass. I use a scripture-based guidance that's been
Manar,
checked over and over.
Does your God have a mind, Manar?
Sure, yeah, he has sure, you could call
Well,
him
just
mind.
before you
how could
answer
it be
that,
mind independent?
well, and
Sorry?
you said objective. You said objective view. Like, what do you
I would
mean
argue
by
that this
because
whole world
a
is
view is
like
a stance,
encompassed within
right?
the brain of
Hang on,
God.
Manar, you're going to have to let me talk, mate. Okay,
Well, I
let
was
me
just
talk.
responding to the other guy.
Yeah, I was in
just
a
1
line of
second.
questioning.
Well, you asked me if there was a God, so I'll
Well-
have to respond to you. You can't just ask me a question and then move on and make a statement and don't allow me to correct you. For example, we believe everything that you're experiencing right now, you couldn't experience except if God allows you to experience it. So that's basically, is that the brain of God? Yeah, sure.
But you stated that you believe in mind independent morality, yet your God
From
has a mind.
subjective entities, yeah.
Well, that's
So your God has a
subjective,
mind.
from the mind of a child.
Yeah,
God.
but he's an objective entity. Is he a subjective entity like me and you? Is God a subjective entity like me and you?
No. Is he mind independent?
What does that have to do with it? I'm talking about.
You,
sure,
Mitch,
he
I'm
is
going-
mind independent.
your
Sure,
definition,
like,
your
if the
definition.
if the tree fell, you don't need to be there to hear it. It still fell. Yeah, so he's there. You don't need to be there. He's still there.
So your morality is not mind independent then?
Well, sure. Yeah, it's a interpretation of what I believe is morality.
No, I
but
mean-
we believe morality itself is mind independent. So do you agree with me?
God-
Morality itself is mind dependent. My interpretation of it is mind dependent. Yes or no? You understand what I just said?
Yes, I don't agree with you
Hello?
because you
Can
just
you
said
answer the
your
fucking
God has a
question?
mind.
Hello?
Manar,
Do you understand?
Manar, stop.
Manar,
Hey,
come
hey,
on,
hey,
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 we're not going to do
don't
this.
say
Calm
that.
down a
He's
little
not
bit.
gonna answer? So he's not going to answer?
You
Hello?
have to give me a.
You understand morality is objective, it's mind independent, and my interpretation of morality, of what I believe is moral,
Can we mute?
that's mind
Toby
dependent.
Theist can talk.
Manar,
You have to
come
give
on.
me a
You
second
have
to
to be
answer, man.
considerate. Just be
I mean-
considerate
Oh,
for a
that's an
moment.
amazing argument. Very intellectual.
And after
he
you
deafened him.
respond,
You can't mute me. I'm gonna deafen. You can't mute me.
what? I mean,
Because this guy BS wants to try to put me in a hole. When I put him in a hole, he refuses to respond. I
Manar,
put you in the hole. I put you in the hole.
this is a
You
back
have to
and
answer.
forth. You're not going to
Well,
rage
allow
over
him to
people.
answer.
Have
Allow
a
him
back
to
and
answer.
forth.
Allow him to answer. Go ahead. Do you understand what I said when I said morality is an objective, mind-independent thing, just like everything else in the universe, mind-independent, and then my interpretation of it is mind-dependent. You understand that or no?
I disagree.
I understand.
Morality is
So
not
let me
mind
explain.
independent.
No. I have to understand this. How can you disagree? Are you saying if I say something is morally bad, automatically it makes it morally bad? How can you disagree with what I just said?
So BS, he didn't say that morality was that. He stated his belief, right? So he believes that morality is morally objective. Okay, it's mind independent or stance independent is what we'd say. So you can't say no, that's not true because it's what he believes.
No, he asked me what I believe.
I'm asking you if you understand and answer my response to my question. How can morality be mind dependent? How can that actually be? Go ahead, explain that. How can morality be mind dependent? Let's hear it. So if you say something is wrong, automatically becomes wrong. What the fuck are you talking about?
I'll
that's not what happens.
Let me answer you.
Then what do you mean by mind dependent equals to moral compass? How can moral compass be mind independent then? It has to be mind independent, just like everything else in the universe. Nothing gives a fuck about what you say about it. It only cares about
let's calm down. Let's calm down. Manar, let's calm down.
Doesn't matter what you say. I am exactly what I am. Doesn't matter what the fuck you say.
Hey, listen for a moment, Manar. Let's calm down a little bit and stop dropping the F-bomb so much. Let's calm down a little bit and have a conversation.
This guy he acts like he's smart. Turns out he's nothing. He's dumber than a box of rocks.
Manar, come on.
What are you talking about?
You piece of shit. BS.
Me.
You
Manar,
bullshitter.
calm down.
I'm not BS. Just chill.
I apologize for my ignorance. I apologize for my ignorance.
Bullshitter is what you are.
I'm trying to apologize for my stupidity. Manar, hold on. So I don't believe that it stands independent because you said it's dependent on God, and you said God is a mind, so therefore it's mind dependent.
God and humans are not the same. God can actually have mind. Morality could be mind dependent on God because He's the objective entity that actually introduced. That He's the guide that I'm using actually. Like I use His scripture based guidance to understand what it is morality. Morality could be mind dependent on Him. Yes, the distance between the sidewalk and the street could be mind dependent on Him, but it's not mind dependent on me. I can't change the distance between the sidewalk and the street by saying this is the distance of the sidewalk and the street. It doesn't fucking make sense like that. Nothing in the world actually works like that.
Manar, just 1 second. I'm Mark Reed, okay? I want to talk to you, but you're just yelling at us. So can we have a conversation where we have a discussion, like just a back and forth, right? Just a normal conversation.
Smart. Don't be dumb. Don't make me get
I'm certainly not. I'm certainly not.
This guy made bad claims and then he asked when I
No. I want to make sure I'm getting it right. I want to make sure I'm getting it right. So when we say objective... When we say objective, would you agree that you're talking about a stance independent? Like I have a stance on, whether ice cream is nice.
No,
so what do you mean by
independent? You don't even know what the fuck you guys are talking about. This is ridiculous. Objective does not mean stand independent. Objective means he has complete knowledge of everything. He has no limited knowledge. That's what objective means. As in he has...
Hey, I'm back. I just had to take a phone call. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you, Wise.
Well, that's usually omniscience, which means knowledge of everything. Omniscience, not objective.
Sure. No, not necessarily knowledge of everything specifically. Sure. I mean, you want to call it omniscient? Sure. I call it objective.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the reason we are subjective is we are limited in knowledge. If we had full knowledge of everything, I would argue that we would be objective entities. We would be entities that have full knowledge.
Manar, I'll explain to you what I understand by objective and subjective, right? I'll explain to you what I understand about it. To me, subjective is stance dependent. Like, so if I have an opinion on whether something's good or bad, or say I have an opinion on whether ice cream is nice, that's my mental state. It's stance dependent on how I view it. Whether, if you put a rock, hang on, Manar, let me finish. I'm seriously, if you don't let me finish, I will seriously just cut you off. Like, seriously.
What does that even mean?
So if you have a rock on the ground, right?
Yeah.
That's not stance dependent. It is there, right? It doesn't matter what I think about it. That's objectively there.
Or no?
Sorry?
Is the rock objective or not, or subjective?
No, it doesn't matter. It's not subjective. It's not up to my perceptions or my opinion whether it's there. It just is there. That's objective. Where subjective is I say, hey, I liked that movie, right? It's a matter of my opinions. It is a matter of my stance on, say, Westerns. I watch a Western, I go, that was a great movie.
Objectively speaking, the movie exists, right? So it doesn't matter
sure.
if you like it or not.
But we're not talking about whether the movie exists. We're talking about
Is the
whether
movie stands independent.
The movie's existence is. Whether it's a good movie isn't.
Sure. So when you say stance independent, as in it doesn't depend on my opinion of it?
Right, exactly.
I mean, sure, I could agree with that. I mean, but I think it's a lazy description. It's not a complete description.
Manar, are you familiar with the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy?
Not really. Why?
So that's
basically the description from it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the major sources that you can go to for standard philosophical definitions of terms, and it defines it roughly as something exists or is true independently of any individual's perception or perspective.
Well, in regards to the movie, the fact that it has a length, right? The movie length, the amount of time, that's objective, right? And objective. And whether or not it's good, like, that could be objective too. Like, whether it meets certain criteria, right? Like, if we define good as, like, movies that have Teletubbies in it. Like, if the movie, in fact, has Teletubbies in it, then we could objectively say that the movie was good.
Yeah, but listen, you guys are subjective entities. We're going to have to come back to this. Subjective entity cannot actually make this determination and can be accurate when making this determination. It's impossible. That's the actual argument we should be diving into.
I want to ask Manar, does God decide...
Why are we trying to understand what is objectivity? Why can't we just...
When it comes to a movie, it is an objective fact whether or not there are Teletubbies in it.
The problem with the objectivity definition is...
There's either Teletubbies in the movie or there isn't.
No. The question isn't what objectivity is. The question is, how can we accurately say that because Teletubbies were in the movie equals it's good? That's the question, is what reference or what, as subjective entities, what are we following back on so we can make this distinction saying this is good or this is bad? What are we following back on?
Do Teletubbies exist outside of the movie?
I'm not going to let you speak. Shut the fuck up. Let me finish.
Do Teletubbies exist outside the movie? Yes or no?
We're not going to constantly... Oh, he's going to deafen. All right. I'm going to mute him and let him know that if that happens again, we're going to remove him from the stage.
And I just want to, when he does come back, I just want to go over some series of questions.
This is ridiculous. You're going to let me finish my fucking sentence.
Okay, so here's the program. Hang on one second. So, Manar, if you're going to constantly insult people and drop the F-bomb, you will be removed from the stage. We're trying to have a conversation here, and you're being very irate for no reason. Nobody here is yelling at you.
Tell him to not interrupt me. Why did he interrupt me mid-fucking sentence?
Manar, I just stop using the F-bomb.
I'm going to make sure that you're never going to finish a sentence by yourself, Wise Ape. I promise you that. I will make sure you never finish a sentence. But let me finish my point here.
No, you won't.
The point should be not what is objectivity. Everyone knows what the fuck is objectivity. If you guys want to...
Manar, last warning. Watch your language, Manar.
Answer to make it sense independent. There's much more involved with objectivities. Limited knowledge, limited information, limited lifespan. There's so much more. But anyways... Objectivity has to have a complete lifespan, can't be limited. Anyways, it can be limited anyway. By the way, here's my question is, who cares about what is objectivity? What we care about, how can we correctly come to this objective moral question? What is good or bad? What makes this? Why is it that Teletubbies being in this movie?
Do Teletubbies exist in your worldview or not?
Teletubbies are in the movie equals to good, and then why is it if Teletubbies are not in the movie equals to bad? That is subjectively preferred. That is subjectively coming acknowledged. That is not actually tied to any objective reality. That's what you, Wise, and the piece of shit bullshitter and Mark like.
Manar,
it's nothing to do.
No
with
more of that.
Answer to that.
Can I respond just to some, because There is a difference between objective and subjective. I would agree. I think it is mind independent, but I guess my most salacious claim towards you would be I do not believe that your God is objective. And so maybe we could talk about that, because I believe that not only is he subjective, I believe that he only knows what his creators knew, that is to say, his authors.
And he's literary, right? Teletubbies do not exist outside of the movie, right? And neither does the Abrahamic God.
But
It's a literary.
So tell me, how are you guys coming up objectively with your moral stance? Objective to the best way you can. What is your objective, actual reasoning? What is morality?
On that, there doesn't have to be. So atheists
You guys don't have an objective view on what is moral.
No. So atheists themselves debate whether morality is subjective or objective. You saying what is your objective stance is assuming there is an objective stance. I'm somewhere in between. Yes, but that's your assertion. Why do you believe?
How can wise make a claim that because Teletubbies are there, therefore it's good, if there's no objective stance?
I think
no matter what anybody makes a claim on, that means it doesn't matter.
Manar,
actually believe what you mean, Amy.
I'd like to make a point of moderation here. I think there's some confusion on your end as to the definitions of words. And so I'll go back over those real fast. So objective means that something exists or is true independently of any individual's perception or perspective, right? So an objective truth would be true regardless of who's observing it, right? And it would be free from bias. So it would strive to eliminate personal biases and prejudices without assessing information, right? It's just something that would be true independent of your opinion, right? Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy defines subjective as in like relating to how something appears in the mind as opposed to how it exists in reality. So it's like your thoughts on something or your opinion of something, right?
Well, here's the claim, Amy. How can you claim that how can you say because Teletubbies are in there, therefore it's good?
Can I explain that?
Okay. Let me clear it up since, sure.
Because I understand what Wise Ape is trying to say. No, what he was trying to say is that if we set the standards and we say, if there is Teletubbies in this movie, therefore it's good. There are Teletubbies in this movie, therefore it is good. That is how that syllogism flows. You disagree with that standard, but that's what he was trying to say is how we could set it up.
Yeah, we already agreed that morality is objective.
Let me elaborate.
I don't think anyone has.
Independent doesn't matter what I say.
Calm down, Manar, calm down.
One good right answer.
Look, so the theist defines good as God, right? So they say, if God does it, then it's good. So the problem is, theism, they're doing what I'm doing with Teletubbies. Like I'm saying, why the definition of good is something that corresponds to a Teletubby. So, but we understand, both the theist and the atheist, that good actually has a standard outside of God or Teletubbies. Like good actually comports to well-being.
No, you're misunderstanding. We don't believe everything God does is good. When God orders, for example, the tribe of Israel to kill each other, it's not good. It's for their betterment. It's better for them because he knows the future. He knows the knowledge of all the unseen. So he knows what is better for them, but he doesn't say that this becomes a good thing. It's still immoral, and the only reason it's actually acceptable is because he believes in the future would be much worse. Therefore, he gives you that order. So I guess we call that the good, but we know that this is not good. Nobody ever, even if they're ordered, even the Israelis, though they were ordered to kill themselves, no one else in the whole history of all of the Bible killed themselves. Because that doesn't automatically mean that this is a good thing to do. You still, it's just that God ordered them for that moment because He knows what is better. But that doesn't equally make that good. So you don't even know what the hell you're talking about altogether.
That's a problem, Manar. And the problem with that is that if God is doing things that are bad and you get your morality from a God, then you get your bad morality. Because
this is the problem: is you guys don't know what is bad.
No, Manar, you're not interrupting. You're not. Okay, just put it out of your mind. You're not. Okay. So, but if you say at the end of the day, when all things are considered, that a God knows it's a good outcome, that's what I'm getting from you. Then you have to say that the actions He took were good because they eventuated with something good.
No, not necessarily. For example, I could say today, oh, it's a curse that I got this DUI. I can't believe it. This is a curse. This is the worst. This is the complete opposite to the blessing. I'm sitting in jail. All because I had a good night and I got a DUI. But
Yes.
and so I could in my head think it's a bad thing. It's a horrible thing that I got DUI. But you don't know the future. You don't know if I kept getting if I didn't get this DUI, that tomorrow I would have drank, then I would have killed myself. So maybe this was a good thing that I actually got it, and it was better for me to actually get this DUI than to keep not getting DUI. So you don't. You can
Manar, there are 3 people streaming right now. Let's be considerate of the words that we're using and thoughtful.
He can't just use bullshit like
Well,
say good
no.
and bad randomly and assume that we
Manar,
all believe what he thinks is good
Manar,
and bad, and we
let
assume
me
we believe
address
it
it
either.
then.
He can
Let me
cry
address
all he
it
wants
then.
in the jail cell. You're not going to interrupt me either. He can cry all he wants in the jail cell. We would still believe it's a good thing for him to get this DUI because it stops him from drinking. What are you talking about? There's not. You can cry all you want and cry and say this is bad, bad, bad. Doesn't matter what you think about it because the future exists. So if God knows what the future is and he knows how to make you give a better position for you, how can you actually argue against that? You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that's a perfect example, and you're supporting my point. It's basically saying if the DUI caused you to stop drinking and live a better life, then it was a good thing that you're arrested, even though it looks like a bad thing. So it looks like the slaughter of all these Canaanites was a bad thing, but in fact it was a good thing because God knew what was going to happen in the future. It's the exact same analogy, so thank you for proving my point.
I mean, I get sure. I mean, if you want to, we won't say going drinking is good for you. We would say that this thing that God, was put upon you is not a curse. It's actually beneficial for you. So we wouldn't interpret it as a curse like you are interpreting it. We would interpret it as a good thing. Now, if it is good or bad, that's mind independent. Me saying it's good, me saying it's bad doesn't equate to it changing. It's still horrible. It's still on my record. It's still everybody can see it. It's still a shame on me. Still, wives will leave me. Or families won't even accept marrying my daughter with them because I have this, for example, DUI. But it's still, so me saying it's good or bad doesn't change it necessarily. But I'm telling you, our view of it, because we are subjective, is what is changing.
It sounds like that. It sounds like you're God, right? Like there is the definition of good and bad is dissolved, right?
Because he's actually thinking that if I say
if
it's
he
good,
controls the
outcomes good. He
outcomes,
doesn't know what he's talking about.
Is eating a cheeseburger good, right?
Just me saying it's good doesn't mean it automatically the action of drinking and driving and getting caught it becomes a good action.
Let's say I eat a perfectly good.
I just mean our interpretation of what it is could change.
Manar, let's say
subjectivity of all of morality.
Manar, let's say we eat a perfectly good, delicious cheeseburger, right? And it was nutritious, and it was just a very good experience. But then we suffer a heart attack, right? Like, who was in control of that outcome? Like, apparently your God, right, set the outcome of that. Like, why? I just feel like it's incoherent. Like, good and bad, like, are arbitrary under your system.
I agree. I feel like this is an incoherent question. I can't even understand what the fuck you're asking me.
Manar, hey, watch the language.
No, hey, you keep trying to, Tapo, there's 6 people against
Yeah, I know, but that doesn't mean you have to constantly drop the F-bomb every other word, man. You should care.
There's 6 people here. Let me actually dive, and all of them are shit at arguing, and all of them are trash. Mark made a shit argument, trying to assume that because I made it a good thing, therefore, objectively speaking, DUIs are good.
Okay, I have a question, Manar. Do you mind if I interject for a moment, please?
Let me not get to Amy yet. I haven't even gotten to Amy. She sounds like a good person.
Manar, I have an easy to answer question. Do you think that?
To be nice to me because these guys are they're all against me, and then when I say,
Manar, just cry more, mate.
I have
those tears. Oh, poor Manar.
It is crocodile tears, but it's fine. So, Manar, do you think that your wife or your employer would approve of the way that you're responding to people online on a regular basis?
No, probably not.
So while we're in this channel, can we try to engage in a way that your wife or your employer would be comfortable with the way that you're responding to people? We would all appreciate it.
That's fine. I can try.
Thank you, Manar.
Manar, are you allowed to have an opinion about morality?
Yes. as long as it's
Okay.
the right one.
And how would you know if it's the right one?
With a lot of study. How can you know anything is right except with studying it? How can you know anything is good or is you're supposed to do it unless you try to do it and fail and try again and see and calibrate and recalibrate? So that's what the scholars of for example, the scripture do. They study the scripture, they do a lot of science. There's so much contradicting information that they have to go through. And then we rely on their information and come up with our own judgments. That's how anything in the world, you read a book and you figure out how to open a business using it. That's how anything in the world is.
I
Okay.
respect
No,
How
that
our
answer.
whole schooling system is. We just read books. That's our old schooling
I,
system.
I don't think that morality is objective. So can you demonstrate to me the objective morality that you claim exists, these moral facts?
Yeah, so just like I claim to you, there are things in this universe that are objective and mind independent than you. And most of the time, as long as these things are outside of your mind, they're usually objective and they're mind independent. So anything outside of your
Okay.
mind is mind independent. Okay? That's where the first claim starts. Then I can start pointing at things outside of your brain and assessing them and seeing if they are mind independent. So for
Right.
example, I'll look at the sidewalk. The size of the
Yeah,
sidewalk.
I can see the sidewalk. Yeah.
Yeah, so the size of the sidewalk, yeah, but it exists outside of your brain. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay, so because it exists outside of your brain, now I can actually measure it. So what I would say is this measurement of this sidewalk, there's a specific measurement for it that's always exact to that measurement. Now,
How do
when
you
I
know
draw
that?
the tape, yeah, how do we know? Because the sidewalk is a set uniform distance from the street,
Yes.
and it doesn't ever change. And until
I
there's
agree.
a change, we don't.
How do you know
we don't-
that?
Hello?
How do you
let
know
him
that?
I was
finish.
interrupting me mid speaking.
It's not me. I didn't interrupt you.
Who was it then?
I don't know.
I don't
Oh,
know.
anyways, so the sidewalk, we know it's uniform. It's not changing. That's why we can assume that there's an objective distance for this sidewalk. This
You'd be wrong about that.
my mic and this mouth, there's an objective space. Now I can tell you, oh, this space looks like it's 12 inches. You can say, no, this is 35 centimeters. And another guy will say, no, this is 2.57 Celsius hecklers, whatever he wants to call them. This doesn't change the actual distance. All of us could be wrong, and still the distance would all of us could be right, and still the distance would be ever unimpacted by our speech. You understand? So that's how I
You're wrong about
understand.
that.
That's how I understand mind-independent things.
I'm jiving with your example here, and I have a question. Could you tell me which is the objective standard for measurement? Is it metric or imperial?
See, that's my proof. My proof is there is no objective standard of measurement, but that doesn't change the actual measurement of the actual object. Do you understand?
So there's not an objective standard of moral measurement.
Mark Reed, doesn't matter what way you measure it, exactly the same distance no matter what. Now you can make a mistake. You can say it's 13 inches and I say it's 12 inches, and then one of us may be right, or maybe both of us are wrong.
Sure.
But it doesn't actually change the sidewalk's distance. That's the argument here, is that me making a mind-dependent statement does not change the objective reality, and that's tied to morality as well. You saying, oh, it was a good thing, or it was a curse for me to get a DUI, or it was a blessing for me to get a DUI, doesn't change the actual morality between of drinking and driving, for example. Do you understand?
How do I choose between the
could I please
imperial?
respond?
Let me, Mark. Come on. No, it was my question initially. I'm trying to ask a question, Mark. Can you tell me how I can decide between the imperial standard of moral measurement and the metric standard of moral measurement?
Yes, because they are mind independent. The moment I prove to you that morality exists outside of the universe, outside of your brain, automatically we can actually make tests on it to assess if it's actually objective or not, just like I did with the sidewalk.
And all measurement is mind dependent.
No, well, sure. So yeah, so your measurements are going to be your interpretation. So what we're going to do usually, we tie morality to society. So we say whatever is beneficial to society or benefits the individual within the society that that finally benefits society, then we say this is morally acceptable, and we make it legal. We say anything that doesn't benefit society or detriment society or detriment individuals within society that will eventually detriment society, we say this is bad. So even your moral compass today is subjective completely. You're right. But that
Well,
doesn't
I'm
mean that there are things that are objectively morally good and objectively morally bad, and that's based on another definition totally.
Well, Mana, I agree that I can go out and look at the sidewalk, and I agree I can measure the sidewalk, and you can show me the sidewalk, and a lot of people will see the sidewalk and agree on the measurement when they put a ruler to it. Now, can you show me, Mana, let me finish. Now, can you show me the morality like you can show me the sidewalk?
Yes. For example, in Canada, yes, easily. You think I'm stupid like you? This is a joke, man. In Canada, self-assisted suicide, self-assisted self-emulation. Sorry, I'll calm down. I won't mention those words. Self-assisted. Do you guys know self-emulation? Directly assisted by the government was legal in 2016 in Canada. In 2021, in 5 years, became 5%
I'm sorry,
of the
that's
total.
incorrect.
Mark Reed, are you going to let me finish?
Yeah, self-immolation is not a thing that happens anywhere.
In Canada, it's legal.
Self-immolation, lighting yourself on fire.
No, self-immolation is ending your life.
Could you be wrong about that?
It's lighting yourself on fire, and it does happen, Mark. The Kwang of the
no, it's
Buddhist
not lighting
faith
yourself
in
on
Vietnam.
fire. Self-immolation is killing yourself.
Immolation means lighting
no.
yourself or lighting fires.
I don't think so.
He's just trying to use an alternative term.
No, immolation literally means killing yourself. You guys,
Come on, he's just using an alternative term that's a little bit safer.
burning, but not necessarily
Self-delete.
Okay,
Yeah,
so what? So you still haven't shown where that's objectively moral
Holy
or
shit!
immoral.
You interrupted me. You wouldn't let me finish. Did I finish my point? Do you even know what my point was? Go ahead. Since you want to interrupt and then tell me that I didn't finish my point.
You just went upon how self-immolation is legal in
so I
Canada.
didn't even finish my point. You actually see that, huh? Now that no wonder I didn't fucking get to the point of.
Are you going to make it, or are you going to sit there and whine? What are you going to do?
If you allow me and not fucking sit there and interrupt me all the time and question me, then I will finish this point. Yes, if you allow me. Can I finish it?
I'm not stopping you.
All right, thank you. So in Canada, self-immolation became what do you guys want to call it? Self-deletion.
That's
Self-deletion,
fine. Yeah.
Self-deletion started off as for extreme cases. And by 2021, with all the expansions they had on self-deletion in Canada, it became 5% of the total deaths of all Canadians in 2021. Until today, they're actually increasing. So very soon, it's going to be 10% of the total deaths of all Canadians. It's literally state-sanctioned self-deletion, okay? So homicide with deliberation, premeditation, everything you want to call it, is just no malicious intent, I guess. Anyways, so it's literally murder. So now that we know that, in America, let me finish, Taco. In America, did you know, Mark Reed, that self-deletion assisted by the state is completely legal? No state is allowed to do that. Federally, it's completely illegal, Mark. So you tell me, Mark, which country, which secular society, the Canadians or the Americans are? Answer that. I'm not going to let you run away from this. Answer that.
Okay, so fact check, roughly 96% of deaths by euthanasia in 2023 in Canada were actually terminal cases, so people that were dying anyway. So your facts are not facts. The federal statistics show the growth in cases has slowed significant, with assisted death making up 4.7% of deaths compared to 4.1% of previous year. So no, not 15%. No, absolutely not.
Oh, when did I say 15%? I said 5%. Stop lying on my name, Mark Reed. I said 5% in 2021. Don't lie on my name. And I said soon it will be 10% because of all the expansions they're doing on the law. They keep expanding it from disabilities to include depression, to include anxiety. They keep expanding that law. So don't fucking lie upon my name. Don't act like you actually.
I'm not lying. I'm not lying.
You lied because you brought up this 15% number that nobody mentioned. Nobody in the world mentioned 15%.
96% were also terminal. So what I don't understand, Mana, are you going to let me talk, or are you going to complain?
Mark, it should be 100% terminal. That means I am right. There are
Can you mute him, please, Taco?
Yeah.
Can you mute him, please? Yeah. Okay. So The problem is that I don't understand where you're getting to its objective morality. You have two countries, both with a moral stance on something. They disagree on what is moral. Canada says, hey, assisted self-exit is moral. And the US says assisted self-exit is not moral. I know you're not listening because you're talking. So how does that show objective stance-independent morality?
Guys, do you remember my question to him? Does anyone remember my question to him? Why didn't he answer?
Hey, Manar, can you answer Mark's question real fast?
Why would I answer his question when he didn't answer mine? Did he answer mine, Taco?
You didn't answer mine.
No, I'm the first one to ask the question. I said to you, which one of those two? And by the way, I'm asking you.
No.
So I can answer your question for you.
I asked you no, Manar. I asked you a question first. I said, can you demonstrate to me this objective morality? And no, you're not. You asked me a question. So instead of asking me, Manar, do we have to mute you again? Instead of asking me questions, demonstrate to me that the difference in morality between the two countries, there is an objective one there somewhere. Don't ask me questions. Demonstrate to me as I ask.
He just changed his whole question because I introduced Canada and America. He changed his whole question. His first question is show to me that morality is objective. That was his first question. And I'm asking him questions to prove to you that he's morally inconsistent, or to prove to you guys he's morally consistent so I can answer his question. So unless he answers this question, I'm not going to be able to answer his question. So he needs to show me that he's morally consistent, can answer my question. Can you tell me which one of those two is moral, objectively moral? Which one of those two?
I don't believe that morality is objective, so your question is malformed.
And for you, which one of which one of them is moral? Which one of them is moral?
Which one is moral by my philosophy? I think Canada is.
Canada's moral for create self-assisted suicide?
Well, for terminal patients, yeah.
So Canada is moral for ending people's life prematurely.
These people are dying in hideous agony from cancer and things.
Yeah. So to you, it's an act of charity to end somebody's life early. That's an act of charity. It's not a hideous thing to do. It's an act of charity, right?
Well, if somebody, say, has gangrene on their leg and they are beyond saving and there's no medical attention, would you... Manar, let me ask something.
They do that in America, too. It's called hospice.
No, that's the problem. Is these people are
Manar,
meant to
you
die.
have to stop over talking.
Are not meant to die.
All right, I'm going to ask Manar a direct question real fast. So, Manar, you're here, and then you can do your thing. I'm sorry, this is very important, and I've been wanting to ask this for a few minutes based on the way that he's acting. So, Manar, do you think that the way that you're acting is a good representation of objective morality? Like, if we see somebody engaging like this, do you think any of us are going to want to abide by your moral code? I'm unmuting you now. Please respond directly.
Absolutely. If I was, by the way, the thing that actually got me so interested in debate is to see people as stern as me, as strong as me. I'll give you one example. Muhammad Hijab. Maybe I'm even more sterner,
There's nothing strong about you, Manar. There's nothing.
Maybe I'm more animate or anonymous. Like I look a little bit more furious, ferocious. But I think this is actually much more appealing to my people that actually want to join my side. Also, you guys are all against my view, so that means automatically I'm allowed to treat you guys as my competitor. And in a competition, I'm allowed to draw a sword in front of you. You think I'm worried about that? So you're going to tell me, in me and you in a war zone, is it going to be for me to draw my sword in front of you? Yes, it is. So this is to me a war zone. And Taco, you can't run away from this.
Weak people,
so we are soldiers against each other here.
Are you threatening us, Manar?
Weakest people have to act like you, Manar. You are weak. You are absolutely.
You are a liar, Mark. Nobody cares about your opinion, Mark. You literally think Canada is immoral for killing people early because they're hurting a little bit or suffering, according to you.
A little bit. Oh, yeah, terminal cancer is just a little bit. It's just a scratch,
you
right?
made up lies. The Gangaria situation is actually very rare. You know what the actual, what's happening is that you are right. Most of them are terminally ill, but...
All right, so I'm going to clarify the point of the Theist Helpline, Manar. So we are not a war zone. We are not in battle with you. We are here to help theists through their theism. You hold your belief for bad reasons, and you're a bad representative of your moral claims. And so we're here to help you through this, right? And Mark Reed and B.S. Lewis and Y-Zip and Amy and I are here trying to have a conversation. And we're doing our best to go one-on-one and not interrupt. But the interrupting and the way that you're behaving is absurd. So I'm going to unmute you, and then we're going to go back to Mark Reed, because that's where it was at before I had jumped in initially, and then you had gotten off track.
And
It's
then
a very
after
good
Mark,
point.
I just want
Try to
to
get the help you need, Menard.
Well, no, it's actually to me, because Mark was asking me what makes morality objective. To me,
No, I didn't.
stating,
I didn't say that. I asked you to
Well, what was your
demonstrate
question?
that the morality that you're talking about is actually objective.
Well, yeah, it is objective, because we don't believe that, legally speaking, just because you made the legal law kill people.
Okay, so I'm just going to assume that
Hey,
Menard
let me
cannot
finish,
demonstrate
let me finish.
objective morality because
Let
he
me
isn't
finish,
actually demonstrating
Let me finish. Calm down. We don't believe you making a legal law saying, "Oh, now I can kill people sanctioned by the state," makes it a moral thing. We believe that there's something above that doesn't make you making a distinction about it does not make a difference of it. It's always going to be more immoral. You can have nuances in life. There are nuances, so you can argue, "Oh, I had to do it," but doesn't change that it was immoral to do. Go ahead.
Can I just ask?
Just
go,
one
Mark.
second, Amy. Just one thing. I'm just going to say, Menard, when you say I believe that morality is objective, does you believing it's subjective make it objective? Is that your stance?
No, that's not my reasoning for it.
So you
reasoning for
haven't
why morality
demonstrated
is
it.
objective. My reasoning for why morality is objective is because it's mind independent. It doesn't exist in my brain.
Yeah, but you
So
haven't
anything that doesn't
demonstrated it.
exist
So
in
I'm
my
going
brain,
to
I can
assume,
see in the
just
real
Menard,
world.
no, don't interrupt me. I'm just going to assume that you can't demonstrate it because I've given you more than plenty opportunity to do so, and you haven't done so. You just said you believe it is and claimed it is, and that's not the same thing. So, Amy, please go.
Thank you so much. And in fact, I will say, after this line of questioning, I do have to go. Not because I don't love this conversation, but it's my dad's birthday. But, Minar, I want to ask, you said that killing it is bad not because of our opinion on it. It sounds like there's actually some sort of objective law. I want to bring up something that Mark was just explaining, which was kind of, we help people die if they're terminal, because I would say of something which you were trying to explain earlier, which is the bigger picture. So my question to you is, killing okay, and was what God did during Noah killing?
Even better. So killing somebody is immoral, we believe. Now God, I said, he's the objective entity. He's able to create moral distinctions and be accurate in them. But me and you were very inaccurate, so we would have to follow his moral guide. So as long as he doesn't give me the okay, I'm not allowed to make any killing. But thankfully, he did.
Just said you wanted to pull out your sword, right? And Taco told you to sheath that thing, right? Sheath your sword.
But
yeah, he gave me serious situations where if I need to save my life, I'm allowed to defend myself. Yes.
Why?
Yeah,
is
but
it
we just pointed out that you're not in, that kind of danger.
I'm not defending myself here right now, and I don't need to pull my sword out against 5 people.
No, you're defending theism, right? And it's a bad position to defend.
Anyways, this is a why I'm pulling my sword.
Why? But why?
Well, sorry, Amy. Sorry. Just one sec. I'll make it a bit fairer. I really got to take off. It's like 2:30 in the morning. It's been great, everybody, but I'm gonna go because I need some sleep. But Manar, I wish I could say it was a pleasure. Maybe just have a conversation. No one's attacking you.
Bro, you're a failure. All you could prove is that morality is subjective. Like I was been saying, like you've been trying to prove that morality is subjective, and no one agrees with you. Like, who the hell thinks that? Yeah, because Mark Reed said it's not okay to do something, therefore it's not okay. Who the hell thinks that? No one in the world thinks that.
No one. I never said that.
Well, what is your whole argument then? The morality is subjective to you, right? By the way, I raised the hawk on this earlier.
We can I could change my opinion on and say, hey, murder's completely fine, and the rest of society wouldn't agree with me.
Anyone else who cares about what your opinion is? How can it be subjective?
Can I finish? Can I actually finish, or what? Can I finish? That it is intersubjective. It's between the entire society. So if I just change my mind, it's not up to my preference. It's basically decided on
I already
a whole
proved
bunch
that
of
that's
people.
not right.
Can I
That's not
finish?
right.
Can I finish? Manar, you're so rude. You are one of the rudest
Go ahead,
people I've
finish. Let
ever
me
seen in
respond
my
to you,
life.
though.
So even if everybody in the world agrees on a something, right, that's subjective, doesn't make it objective. And I've already
Sure.
asked you to
I
show
agree
it
with
to
that,
me. You
sure.
haven't. But I'll make it fairer on you because I got to get some sleep. But Amy, a
Let me
pleasure.
respond. Don't
Marco,
run.
a pleasure. B.S. Lewis, so good to see you.
Are you just
YZ,
gonna run?
take care.
This is why I have to
Sending
interrupt
love,
him, 'cause
Mark.
he won't let me
Thank you,
talk
Mark.
to him.
He's in
pleasure, Mark.
Australia. It's kind of a long hour difference.
Who
Pretty
cares?
much, yeah.
Who cares? Why is he running away? He's been here all day until I got here. Now he wants to leave.
I
Now
mean,
he
I'm
wants to leave when I actually.
All right.
about to leave
thank
too.
you for your
All right.
time, Mark. We appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah, I actually said I didn't have that much time when I started like 2.5 hours ago. So, yeah.
Yes, Mark was very, very generous.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Great
You
one.
should all check out.
This old switchboard could talk. Wow. Your ears would sizzle. 1880. We take Alexander Graham Bell's invention for granted today. Perhaps we should. But isn't it incredible that millions and millions of people can talk simultaneously to practically any spot on Earth